will be shocked when they see some of these stories. I have to share with our audience the story of Vicha Ratanapati, elderly gentleman here. Have a look at his picture, and I'm just going to scoot up so you can see what happened to him, which is truly shocking. Unprovoked attack, pushed. He's 84 years old. What kind of, oh goodness me, what kind of attacks are you seeing? What are the stats that you have, Cynthia?
Yes, so one thing that I want to just share right out bat is that since we started tracking anti-Asian racism and xenophobia in March, we've seen over 2,800 incidents of racism and discrimination directed at Asian Americans. And what we're seeing is that, at least from our data, that a majority of these incidents are what we would consider verbal attacks and harassment while people are living their daily lives under the pandemic. So as essential workers, as frontline workers, delivery drivers, school nurses, et cetera, are being subjected, are being dehumanized. And we are also seeing a category of discrimination in the workplace, online bullying, certainly in social media as an accelerator of hate. And then we do have some instances of what we would consider hate crimes. So being here in the Bay Area, where we have had visibility on these recent attacks, it has been a very painful time for our community. And it's one of the reasons why we held actions over this past weekend to really voice our concerns, to condemn these attacks, and to demand action.
All right. Happy Saturday, everybody. Today is going to be a pretty good episode. We have a totally packed house today. I don't even want to start with the monologue. I'm just going to bring everybody in because we have so many people. So first and foremost, let me introduce my co-host, my homie, my dog, my brother from another, Pascal Robert.
My man, my brother Jason Miles. What's going on, my man? How are you living?
I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm excited for today. Let's bring in our brother from the Left Flank Vets. He is a host of a very successful Twitch show, a bunch of post 9/11 combat veterans that are now leftists, Marxist thinkers. He is Marcus from the Left Flank Vets.
Yo, how's it going? How's it going? Hello, everyone. Happy to be here.
and coming all the way from Philadelphia, you may know him as the host on Jacobin, Paul Prescott.
How's it going? Best city in the world, Philadelphia. You forgot to add that small part, but
you guys have no idea off air. The reason why the show started a little later is because we were having some beef. Not even East Coast, West Coast beef, some East beef.
Right. It's East. Well, and I would say it's East on Midwest.
And you just dropped in a line about cheesesteaks, and I couldn't even defend myself.
Okay,
there's really no defense.
Cheesesteak line. You got to defend yourself.
First of all, it depends where you're getting a cheesesteak from.
But, of course, spoken like a true Philadelphian.
I mean, let me not start because you said from South Philly. That's one thing. But anyway,
I'm just gonna say this: anytime you say something about cheesesteaks to someone from Philly, the first thing you're gonna say is, "Well, it just depends on where you go."
Right.
You know. But at the end of the day, is putting the canned cheese. That's just something that's a regular thing, and.
I mean, like, Paul, if anyone from Ohio has something to say, all you ever have to say is that's why y'all got punk ass chili. Because that's the worst chili. Who put sugar in chili? Pascal, did you put sugar in chili?
No.
Paul, does your mom put sugar in
He's
chili?
leaving. He's leaving.
Who the hell
Nah.
does shit like that? Hold on, let's bring in our host.
I don't
Let's
even
ask
put
her
sugar
if
in
she-
coffee.
Our host, I'm sorry, our guest today is a professor, assistant professor of criminology, law, and society at the University of California, Riverside. She is also a friend of damn near 30 years, Dr. Sora Han.
Hello, good morning.
Greetings and good morning to you.
Good.
Sora, do you put sugar in chili?
Oh no.
No.
Cinnamon. Sweet
No.
ass meat.
So one little minor correction.
Oh, sorry. Your title?
It's not.
Oh, I said Riverside. It's
No, if I
Irvine.
say
I'm sorry.
And I really tell. I'm old. It's Irvine. Yes.
Sorry. I said the wrong school. Because you know why I always say Riverside? Because I've spoken to more Riverside people, and Dylan is Riverside. And I don't know why I
That's
get
right.
you too confused, because they are extremely different areas in California.
Very different, but also very different campuses representing
but-
different schools of thought. But anyway,
Anyway,
That's a-
we are here today to talk
Jason.
about. Yes. Can you hear me?
Don't forget about super chats.
Oh, yeah. So we finally have hit monetization. It looks like somebody did put a super chat in there. So thank you very much, Todd Buckingham.
Oh, wow.
Thank you very much. So we finally have hit a point of monetization, so Pascal and I can actually pay a few bills.
Yeah.
So your super chats are very much appreciated, because this is listener funded programming here. We take no corporate money yet.
Capitalism.
Yeah, right.
Capitalism has occurred.
Next episode, they'll bring on some lobbyists, some big pharma lobbyists as guests.
Well, see, I think I want to do you one better, Paul.
All of a sudden, the camera's a lot clearer on the next one.
Right? I actually want to do you one better. It's like, I think that eventually, so Left Flank, as a bunch of leftist veterans, are eventually going to get bought out by like Raytheon.
Oh, right.
And then just start talking about, well, you see, you save lives by this new bomb that's got 30
Like,
knives
maybe
that bust out
drones
of it.
aren't that bad, really, when you think about it.
You could hella tell too when like people take the bag, because all of a sudden the narrative changes a lot. They're like, Joe Biden is doing good work. I don't know why everybody's complaining about Joe Biden.
Everybody worries about the bomb victims, and no one ever is really concerned about the bomb makers. Those are good American jobs.
There was that story in Richmond where we're talking about. I think we're talking about last week, where the people that did drugs and their baby died, and not the whole story, but a lot of it centered around the feelings of the police officers that had to find the dead child and not the parents. It was like the police officers are parents first and police officers second.
What?
So I was like, wow, that's an interesting narrative.
Maybe they should stay home and take care of the damn kids.
Right.
So there's Marcus and I have definitely talked about it a lot. Pascal and I have definitely talked about it a lot, and Sora and I have stayed up late texting back and forth, talking about the incidents in Atlanta, or the incident in Atlanta, quite a bit, from the media coverage to the backlash, and when I was trying to put this episode together, I was trying to take a different angle on how we should look at situations like this, because the first thing that happens, and actually what happened in Atlanta, is you get an increased police presence, right? And that's never good. But there's also the fear, if I'm in that environment, I'd be a little shook. I mean, somebody just came in and shot the place up. And generally what happens is the citizens call for a increased police presence. But if we go back and look at incidents similar to this that have happened, that police crackdown leads to newer and tougher laws that never really stop anything, don't really help. Do you want to say something, Pascal?
No, I'm listening.
Oh, you just listen? Oh, okay, you had that look like you were about to say something. So that's where we bring in our I wouldn't say, would you call yourself an expert, Sora? Can we call you an expert yet? Can you just call anybody an expert?
No, I don't like that term.
I actually hate experts.
I don't.
But you
like
actually
that
worked
term.
in the abolition world for some time.
I did.
And you did study with Angela Davis?
Yes, I did my doctoral training with Angela Davis. Seems like ages ago. But I was actually involved in in critical resistance here in the Bay Area when it first launched, and I think relevant for our discussion today, I'm involved in drafting a joint statement between critical resistance and Incite Women of Color Against Violence. Gosh, I can't remember the year now, but this was a collaborative statement, sort of trying to think about how women respond to violence and how to create a terrain, which we actually hear now, where when we have events like these in Atlanta, we give our public and our organizations a way to respond and seek solutions that don't add to the police state. And I think that we see some of that language in the recent response.
Yeah, I actually wanted to even just jump on the comment that I think it was like Sam Jones had just made in the response to the UK police officer murdering was it Sarah? I can't remember the last name. It starts with an E. And the response was to put more like plainclothes police officers and things of that nature. And I think, and Jason had mentioned earlier this morning, that in the same way there had been a heightened police response in Atlanta to these murders. So I think they've kind of already gone into the realm that you were just speaking out against. And I don't know, is there a way to stop that, and or at least where do we go from here, knowing though that they've already crossed that line in a sense?
Well, this is, I think that certainly abolitionist organizations have been working on this for a very long time. You'll hear that many of the activists are sort of saying, give us, resources, support our efforts to create safety within our communities, as opposed to increasing budgets for policing or reforming policing to offer more sensitive, culturally sensitive policing. And this is a way to not only sort of register a critique of what is inevitably happening, but also to widen the sort of possibility of a more radical response from within the Asian American community and within the sort of consortium of Asian American organizations, which we also know, I think maybe this was a couple weeks ago, has an amazing range in terms of its political ideologies, spanning from a kind of third world radicalism to really right-wing Christian, sort of positions that are right lockstep with the Trumpists. So that's the kind of ideological terrain that I see many of the activists who've been making public statements and writing opinion pieces, that's where they're trying to intervene. How to actually create a situation where it's sort of a kind of seamless transition into more policing in the area. Honestly, I think that the best lesson for this is the Black Lives Matter protests from the past summer and the history of Black radical politics, where it takes people demonstrating in the streets. It takes mass mobilization in the streets to effectively resist that kind of consolidation of police power.
Now, there's been a lot of people talking about, and Joanna says it right here in the chat, that there's a lot of anti-Asian sentiment, and on a bipartisan level. I don't know if you guys are noticing that. From Donald Trump, definitely was over the top with his, almost to a insultingly comic level, whereas Joe Biden, to me, stands firm on the U.S. standard Cold War policy, anti-China level. Do you think that plays any part of this, Paul?
Well, I was going to say on Biden, even he's been framing his infrastructure plan, and of course I would support an infrastructure overhaul that's needed, but he's been framing it in terms of competition with China. Mm-hmm. And it's like everything has, and he's not sure, of course, he's not doing that in the same way that Trump is. He's not doing it like as vulgar a way that Trump, but like everything is like, well, we don't need to do infrastructure because we need infrastructure. We need it because China's is better and they're overtaking it. And like that, from the stuff I've been reading on the plan, that is what he's doing. I can't claim to know exactly in every case in terms of in every hate crime, how much that stuff is directly connected or not. But like, the Democrats have definitely been fear mongering on China, just both militarily and then like domestically. And this also comes up sometimes, in the labor movement around like Buy American campaigns. And, I'm all for saying we should buy union made products, but sometimes the way it's framed in certain areas of the labor movement is essentially framed in an anti-China way. And it's really missing the point of like who the enemy is, because at the end of the day, we know it's often US companies or multinational companies that are making the choice to move a job to another place, whether that's China or anywhere else, to get to lower wages and get around unions. So like, of course, the enemy there is not the Chinese worker that's going to work at a job that's available. The enemy is that multinational company. But, so when it's framed exclusively on Buy American, I think whether the intended consequences this or not, it leads many American workers to kind of like just adopt anti-China attitude, just kind of wholesale, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Pascal, did you want to add something?
No, I mean, I definitely think that with the influx with the coming of the Trump administration, the nativism is kind of the political posture of America overall, not exclusively with China, but we see that with Mexicans and other immigrant groups, but definitely with the, kind of belief that China presents some kind of existential threat. Also in the wake of the coronavirus, with Trump, dispatching of terms like, the Wuhan virus or the China virus, that logical that perception that China spilling over into Asia is a contemporary reality. But we have to realize that this is not a new phenomenon in the context of American history in terms of xenophobia or antagonism towards Asians or Chinese. We can go back to the Chinese Exclusion Act. We can go back to the building of the railroads. There is a long history in the context of American society to demonizing Asian people that is not alien to the way in which our society functions. But what's interesting to me is that how exactly this current media depiction of the Asian community as the victims under siege, under attack, juxtaposes with the model minority mythology of the Asian community as being the community on economic ascent in the United States. And how exactly do we reconcile those two perceptions in the way in which they are being, the media is depicting the contemporary phenomenon that we're seeing now? That because I'm seeing in different communities of color, whether it's the Black community or other immigrant community, comments of people talking about, well, the Asian community, they have more money than white people and they're doing better than anyone else. So there's almost this kind of inability to view them as victims because of the their social or their perceived social or class status. And there's a whole range of reactions I'm seeing, particularly in the Black community, in terms of challenging this questions of solidarity on very, very reactionary terms based on, quid pro quo, when do they stand with us? Or, how have they stood with us? So there's a lot of really interesting internal kind of ethnic people of color dynamics that I see brewing, reacting to this particular phenomenon. So I don't mean to prolong the question. I'd like to hear what people think.
No. That was a great question. Sora?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Thank you for bringing that up, Pascal. So what you're saying about how this sort of history of anti-Asian violence and discrimination and its kind of structural relationship with the United States geopolitical relationship with the sort of rise and development of capitalism in Asia, I think is a really important in mind. I think one of our audience members, I think MJ, the comment has now passed my scroll, noted how important it is to keep those kind of geopolitical considerations in mind. And that is absolutely a part of this long history that people are constantly referring to have a better, more structural analysis of what is going on now. At the same time, and I think, Pascal, this is what you're trying to get at, right? As Asian organizations here, Asian immigrant groups here, as Asian American organizations here start to, sort of get invited into the spotlight to present an analysis, we've not necessarily seen the kind of articulation that I think is being expressed here with the kind of ambivalence that maybe Black communities and organizations are feeling, which is, how do we relate to, in a sense, one of the theories used and circulated widely is this sort of like in-between position that Asian immigrants and Asian American communities occupy in the racial hierarchy of whiteness and Blackness in the United States. And, I specifically have been thinking about this and sort of wanted to come on the show and sort of open this question as a question that we should honestly think about. So, for example, if we take the response to the Atlanta shootings, what we see is a kind of claiming of the identity of the victims as the launching point for understanding what this violence is. And that is a kind of classic strategy in mobilization, and you can see the mobilization of the organizations. At the same time, how to articulate that identity in the South, for example, it invites a different set of history. So my immediate sort of set of questions is, in addition to the histories of wars that the United States has waged, in Asia, what is the history of the sexual economy of violence in the South, right? That is a very different history that's introduced. And by virtue of this event taking place in the South, it absolutely should inform our response and the way that we think about moving forward in terms of Asian American and African American Black organizations being able to, again, pursue a much more radical abolitionist response.
Well, let me ask you this, Sora, and I'll ask this to all the panel. Does this shooting make us shine a brighter light maybe on sex work? Because one thing about the shooting, and I shared the video, I know I shared it with Paul either early this morning or late last night, and I think I shared it with you guys. I don't know if you guys saw it. There was a woman on Democracy Now! That was trying to describe the conditions in which these women, some of them that got killed in, were living in inside of the massage parlor, and at a certain point, like, stop short of saying they're slave-like conditions, because these people were living inside here and had to work there for God knows how much money. It was pretty horrible conditions, but those were conditions that were brought on them by people that looked like them.
This is a very important thing you're bringing up here, Jason, because one of the things that seems to be lacking, and by the way, this again, we realize that this happens in the way America covers all communities, but even in the Black community, right? That there's this assumption that there's one particular class of individuals, usually an elite class, that represents the collective interest of everyone else. I don't see any attempt to complicate this Asian narrative within the class hierarchy with internally Asian society, that like these people were, the women were killed, were obviously clearly poor. They don't fulfill that kind of that model minority mythology. How is that resonating internally in terms of how they're being viewed, not only by the media, but within the Asian community? And why is there discussion in terms of how internal class hierarchy within the Asian community helps facilitate the type of exploitation we see of these workers? I think it's a very important point. And of course, as people who are somewhat on the left, I don't think we can expect mainstream corporate media to make these kind of analyses, but I frankly haven't seen anyone interrogate this particular event from that perspective. And I'd love to hear some thoughts on that.
Go for it.
Should I?
I mean, we brought you here for a reason, huh?
Well, let me just say, I really am sort of weighing in as a researcher, a researcher who's really, kind of immersed myself in the study of the history of American law. And so I guess I hesitate sort of making any kind of prescriptions to activist organizations, and my thoughts really are sort of engaging with what are the key terms that are emerging in the response, right? And how do those terms either narrow or widen the scope of political possibility? And there, correct me if I'm wrong, Pascal, but there really hasn't been a discussion of the model minority. I mean, and this is the reason why, when there was that statement circulated, I can't remember the name of the organization that circulated, how, critical race theory, this particular sort of genre of knowledge from within legal studies about the history of race and racism in American law is anti-Asian, right? That is a sort of a way in which we could register the model minority. So these are organizations that would really sort of embody and take on the model minority status and say, hey, look, we did it, why can't everybody else? Mm-hmm. And that definitely is leverage against the kinds of organizations that have been stepping up to, advance issues of gender equality and sex workers' rights, et cetera, et cetera. So that internal class differentiation is very, very important. I think it manifests in the response around the shooting in the sense that we don't hear too much of the kind of Asian American organizations who really defend the model minority myth weighing in. But I think we will actually see more of it, and how it will actually play into the discussion. It will, I don't want to sort of make predictions, but the forms of historical events that are being referenced, there's the Vincent Chin assault in Detroit that I think many of our audience know about. He was attacked by two white men who, were angry about, at the time, the sort of deindustrialization we saw in American automaking, and attacked Vincent Chin. And that is sort of entering into our political discourse, as well as the kind of surveillance and the construction of the foreigner in a specific sector of Asian immigrant sort of migration to the United States. And those are the kind of much more professional, sort of bourgeois, capitalized sectors of immigrant communities, Asian immigrant communities. And so we're gonna start to see an occasion for us to have to reassert that if we're going to articulate a radical racial politics stemming from these recent events of anti-Asian hate, then it needs to actually start with and center, women like those who were killed a few days ago. And the question is, where do we get that class perspective? What kinds of resources and histories do we draw to get that kind of class perspective? I would say that, that's where the relation between Asian American organizations and African American organizations is crucial. Because if we've seen anything from this long history of racism in the United States, it's Black radicalism that has really sort of created the space and held a space open for that class perspective that you're talking about.
Well, let me ask you and I'm always asking everybody this question. But so do you think there's a bit of the race pimps are coming out at this point? Like, are you thinking that, Pascal, that what we're seeing right here?
You mean like the Asian version of our race pimps or our own traditional race pimps?
Yeah, is there an Al Sharpton? Is there?
Yeah. I'm asking the question. I don't know. I'm asking. I'm not saying.
This is a very good question. No, Jason, that's not an insignificant question, right? Because we've talked ad nauseum on this show. I don't think we talk about it consistently about how the leadership apparatus within the Black community is a class manifestation of a tier or the Black political class or Black misleadership class or whatever you want to call them, basically being in third world studies they would call compradors, or in other words, they are functionaries of the ruling class who use racial unity as an illusion to cover their role as basically implementing an agenda of the ruling class under the charade of Black unity. So the question becomes, and this is a long-standing, as we had Preston Smith on the show talk about how this is a long-standing reality that has existed in the African-American kind of political paradigm. The question becomes, right, is that, does this exist in the Asian community? Is there an Asian political class? Now, I am not cognizant of, I don't believe that there is an Al Sharpton for the Asian community or a Jesse Jackson for the Asian community.
No,
and I think that part of the reason
Yang wants to take that mantle on.
I think part of the reason why we have not traditionally seen that, right, is that the perception, and the key word is perception, is that the Asians are doing well. They're kicking off. You know what I'm saying? They don't have all these other problems. As a matter of fact, let's be very blunt. When we do in the recently, when we have seen conversations with the Asian community around political events outside of these racial antagonisms, they've been about things like challenging affirmative action, questioning the relationship between Asians and merit and hierarchy in universities, which have been antagonistic to things that have been very important to the African American community. And there is, and I've seen this, a kind of belief that these people don't need help. They are the community they are the ascended community. I see people posting charts about wealth gap. Look at the Asian white wealth. They got more money than white people. You know what I'm saying? Why do they need our help? So there are all of these kind of complicated perceptions about, the Asian community vis-a-vis other, oppressed communities of color, if you will. And I'm I would like to know, is there a burgeoning leadership strata in the Asian community that exists similar to the Black political class, if you will?
Paul, did you want to jump in? You look like you want to say something.
Yeah, well, it's not a direct response to that question. I can wait. It's something
Go
more.
ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, to the earlier question of like, where can the class perspective come from? Mm-hmm. And this is a big problem I'm seeing, and it's not, of course, it's not unique to Asian Americans. This is for everyone, that about the NGOization or the non-profitization, whatever you want to call it, of politics. And like our political institutions and organizations are hollowed out. And they're being replaced by these nonprofits and NGOs that are never going to really center the class narrative. And that's the issue. I mean, think back to the civil rights movement. The main organizations that were carrying that forward were mass membership, dues-paying organizations. I mean, for one, the labor movement was crucial, but organizations, and not that these are perfect groups, but NAACP, SNCC, CORE, even Black Panther Party, these are actual real political organizations where you're paying dues, you are a member. Even the Democratic Party, which is not a real party in that sense, but where politics was happening, has also been hollowed out. Mm-hmm. And I think that really is where you're going to get the true class perspective, because these are organizations that come from a class and are, ostensibly maintained by that class financially and organizationally. So, and that's why I don't think automatically the idea is like, well, if they're working with the existing Black organizations, and I think we might talk about this later with Black Lives Matter, but you see the same problem coming up. They're attempting to do this through a hodgepodge of nonprofits. And I don't think when we have made progress, it has been done that way. I think we need other political institutions that have been hollowed out over so long. I think that's where you will get the class perspective. I just don't really expect it from the existing like constellation of 10 million nonprofits doing 10 million things, if that makes sense.
I think last night we called it the NGO. We called it the NGO industrial complex.
Yeah, the nonprofit
right.
industrial complex.
And this is something like, it really keeps me up at night. It's become the new common sense of like, I'm not trying to say if you work for a nonprofit, you're a bad person, like very well-meaning people, but the tools that we once had to really get the things we want to get done, it's not that they're not there anymore, but they've been hollowed out, and it's just common sense of like, oh, you got to do a nonprofit. That's how you make change. That's how you're a thought leader. It's really bad. It's just a bad culture of political activism that we can't go that route. It's just not going to come from that route. It never has. Again, I think the civil rights movement is a great example of that. The labor movement, when we've seen these reforms, you can't like short circuit or shortcut that process.
Marcus,
I think that what Paul's saying is like exactly kind of on the head. And when I think, and as I was saying on the pre-show, like it was like kind of the first thing that I thought was, I no longer want to try and do this zoom in on this specific incident, this tragic this series of murders, to try and extrapolate, this is what we need to do next, right? I think it's better just understand that there's a lot of narratives at play, but there's a few that we can understand that absolutely need to be taken apart, and I think Sword hit on it before, where how are we looking at the history of the United States military and foreign policy, and how do those structures now play into how people immigrate to this country and how do they fit into our society, and then going further into how do people empower themselves. And want to mirror what Paul's saying. Hey, if you work in a nonprofit, like, they're not saying you're a bad person or anything like that. Like, but honestly, we live in a capitalist society, so almost everywhere that we work, as the proverbial we, is engaging in some sort of exploitation in one way or another. Right? If you're just even participating as the exploitee, and so yes, like, and that's where I think the actual effort needs to be done is organizing in a way that dismantles the military industrial complex, because this is the stuff that I see every day is almost, easily every day. There's multiple articles in the defense and national security sphere that are directly geared at provoking a war with China. And how do these things play into roles and how people are viewed in society? And then just on the basic, if people's material conditions are not met because we live in a society that generally oppresses almost all of the working class, people are going to end up in situations where they have to live in this massage parlor, and engage in labor that they probably wouldn't
in their twilight years. Let's also add that these people are
and that's
in their twilight years. These aren't spring chickens. These are older women.
Something that it was really hitting me is that for one of these ladies, and her son had spoken out and saying that she used to be a teacher in Korea, and coming here, and this is all the work she was able to find, and but this is a lady in their fit. Most of these women were old enough to be this dude's mom or grandmother. So there's a lot of things I think that are just screaming out from this incident, but I don't think looking at it as a catalyst to some different action that we need to do, is a good way to think about it. I think, zooming out, understanding that, there's multiple structures at play here. And, kind of what Paul was alluding to is that building organizations that actually can tackle the bigger, problems is probably a more useful.
Also, are we in the age of, and we've been having this conversation definitely off air, and I'll go ahead and do it on air. I feel like in the post-Trump news cycle sphere, people really loved Donald Trump because he was great for clicks. Not to say that these things aren't horrific, but some of these incidents that are being proven not racially motivated are being thrown into the fire of racially motivated incidents. And the hashtag activism doesn't really get at any of these issues that we're talking about. Everything we're saying right now, you can't fit into a hashtag.
Yeah,
that's right. And yet, going to Paul's point, many nonprofit organizations today that stand in as the voice of whatever community, this is the sphere in which they are trying to intervene in a political discourse without sufficiently sort of understanding that there's a profound limit to the medium that is being used, right? And so already we can see the news cycle sort of moving on. I want to go back to the question that Pascal put on the table, really, because I think it's maybe one of the most urgent questions that we have to tackle at this moment. I'm not sure that we will come up with something that is different from what we've seen in the past, but I want to really recognize what Pascal is saying here, which is that we need to have a class politics, but also within a kind of class solidarity that we might be able to forge if we could unseat the sort of, the kind of centrality of the ways in which a middle-class bourgeois or elite kind of political class kind of rises and dominates the sort of public sphere. Is that one of the things that we see, even if we were to be able to create a much more stable space for a class solidarity across Black and Asians, right? So rejecting any sort of articulation of an Asian American position from this idea that many want to put forward today, which is that, you know, we need to, that the Asian Americans suffer discrimination too, as if that is not something that is fraught with class, okay? What we see, and this is a structural matter, what we see, and I've actually written about this case, it's a educational segregation case, Gong v. Rice in Mississippi, I think it was 1932, where, you know, a Chinese family was trying to argue that their child should be sent to the white schools because they were not Black, right? In a default situation in segregation in which, because they were not white, they would go to the Black schools. And, you know, many Asian American activists and thinkers today would want to sort of say, well, this is an example of how Asian Americans occupy this very kind of like in-between status between Black and white. They're actually oppressed and excluded from, you know, a kind of viable political position because they're excluded from the position of Black and white. They're neither Black nor white. I'm interested in sort of thinking about how that betweenness fails to, you know, is an excuse for Asian American activists and organizations to actually confront how, when put in that structural position, Asian Americans have often chosen to be seen as white, right? In this situation, they were saying, you know, we're not Black, so we should go to the white schools. And this is antithetical to the way that a kind of Black radical politics has articulated itself. I hear, Pascal, you know, you're challenging the sort of internal class differentiation within Black politics, but nonetheless, right, when we think about the civil rights movement, when we think about the Black Power movement, that is a critique that benefits everybody, versus the kind of claiming of rights and the claiming of voice of Asian Americans historically and today that want to claim it for themselves, meaning this is our moment. And when Asian American, you know, organizations do this, it really does sort of unearth this antagonism that is there in our history. So how do we actually, you know, work ourselves, and by this I mean Asian American, work ourselves out of that position, out of that structural position, and that historical sort of habit of choosing whiteness. And I think that, you know, part of what I was sort of alluding to was to make reference to the fact that these victims of the recent shooting, their lives were lost in a sexual economy of anti-Blackness in the South, which has a long-standing history of sexualizing and disappearing Black women, and actually was founded in one of the most insidious sort of sexual economies, plantation slavery, right? And so when we're able to pivot like that, not worrying actually with sort of having to bring, you know, the sort of model minority identified Asian Americans along with us, not choosing whiteness, but thinking about how to relate with Blackness, then I think we have the possibility of some different kind of politics. But I, you know, other than that,
there's some Black people that want to respond.
Okay.
I actually want to address that. Is that, you know, as absolutely true and salient that the narrative that you shared about the history of the South is in terms of where this happens. This also happens in a city that's absolutely completely controlled by a Black political class. You know that that you have an elite. You know, when we're talking about, I'm seeing all these articles that are saying things about this case. Watch whiteness work. Watch whiteness work. I was like, this is a Black city run by Black people. Think about watch whiteness work. the whole internal infrastructure of Atlanta is run and has been by Black people. That's another aspect of this narrative that is not being complicated or discussed enough in terms of how this case is proceeding, internally within the politics.
Is it just because it needs to be oversimplified again for the media sphere to have something to feed to the hungry public, right? White guy shoots Asian ladies. He also shot some other people, but he shoots Asian ladies. So there's a racist white guy. The cop isn't the best dude and apparently had a shirt that said China virus. Guy had a bad day. So we forget everything else. Everything you just said doesn't even come up in any discussion that I've been hearing. And I've been listening to way too much about this case and the others.
Well, I don't think we can expect corporate commercial capitalists.
You can interrupt Pascal, sorry, it's fine.
To complicate,
No, I want to hear what Pascal's going to say.
To complicate these narratives in the way that if we actually had a real left, that we would be doing, quite frankly. I think that we should not be expecting mainstream media to do the job that people like ourselves, if we were effective, should be doing to complicate these narratives, frankly. I mean, I think this is something that, even though Democracy Now! Is a foundation kind of creation, we should be hearing left voices going on the alternative media spaces that we have, make these kind of more nuanced analyses. And we don't hear it. This is why This Is Revolution is an important podcast. Please subscribe, hit the bell, and super chats are available.
You're welcome.
Because these, we have to really complicate the kind of media pablum that we're getting about these events to make people understand, like, oh, there's a lot more sophisticated, nuanced, involved in what's happening here. And I haven't seen anyone discuss the small level of nuance that we've shared on this show thus far. The internal class politics of the Asian community relative to these neighborhoods, the class politics of this happening in a Black community with a Black political class, the role of the Asian community being viewed as model minorities and how that complicates them being viewed as victims, how Black Asian solidarity is complicated by historical anxieties about positionality and merit through affirmative action cases and things of that nature. None of this conversation is happening anywhere from what I've seen. And it's the lack of communication about this is just allowing reactionary nativism in all segments, even in the Black community, have people make really, really ridiculous statements that is not going to foster the kind of solidarity needed to challenge this type of violence.
Do you think it's because people are afraid to talk about this on a deeper level? Because the deeper you get, the more you can't kind of hang on to your narratives of white man bad. Because if you go into the place, it's owned by, Asians, they're being pimped by Asians. That's probably not part of the narrative that they want to tell. Again, like you said about the political machine in Atlanta is a Black political machine all the way through. So do you think that's the reason why?
I think it's simply because capitalism will never use its mechanisms to challenge its internal workings, particularly in the media, which means they're not going to illustrate how class internal stratification within communities of color is helping facilitate a narrative that absolves people of responsibility for these actions, because it's not in their material interest. Because then you're going to stop people questioning the tools that they use that allows them. Do you think that they want to have Black people challenging the Black political class? Do you think that they want to have poor and working class Asians who are not getting into Stanford talking about how, these people don't represent us? Andrew Yang does not represent me.
Damn.
Well, I don't know. Somebody goes to what you asked earlier is like, is there even an existence of, a political class for Asian Americans that is able to be co-opted by, the mechanisms of capitalism to disrupt or even generate their own narrative? Or is that something that like the media will just do on its own because that's just what it does? So I don't know. I mean, I feel like even if whether it exists or not, that Asian political class, the mechanisms of capitalism will fill that hole all on its own. And I think we see that in coming from the media, coming from the response of the Black political class that runs Atlanta, is that there's kind of like the modus operandi that is, more police, do some candlelight vigils, make sure the donations go to the nonprofit industrial complex. And then, hopefully by Monday, either, Joe Biden trips down another flight of stairs or Trump does something, and the cycle moves on without any actual analysis work done to combat the structures that create these things.
I mean, absolutely, Marcus, and I think that this is part of the reason why, a structural analysis is so important, right? Because in a structural analysis, what we're talking about are positions, right? And we're in a moment now where the people who can occupy these positions, sort of, as a set, want to present an idea of the United States as very much inclusive, and with Biden's appointments, et cetera, right? And so part of radical organizing, and when I was thinking earlier this morning about, well, the title of this show, This is Revolution, and how do I actually relate to that today? And I'm like, well, my first answer is like, how do we actually start off like revolutions of thought, right? Sort of revolutions of thought, throwing off these really traditional and tired ways of talking and thinking about these issues. I think that so when in Atlanta, we're dealing with a kind of multiracial or even Black political elite, we still, returning to a structural analysis, understand that they're occupying a certain position, as are Asian American organizations. And despite those positions we occupy, how do we insist on relating differently? And I I'm sort of hopeful about that. But that kind of alternative way of relating and thinking and talking like we're doing now actually requires first working through these real divisions and these real antagonisms that impede any kind of effective mobilization. And when I talk about effective mobilization, I'm not talking about who we're going to put in office, et cetera, et cetera. I'm talking about, the kinds of resources that we gather to support the most vulnerable in whatever communities we live in.
Paul, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I mean, something Sora said earlier kind of got me thinking about, I think because you were kind of posing the questions how to do this work in a position of solidarity and not sort of antagonism. And it made me think about some of the organizing around public education going on in Philadelphia, and how there are a few Asian American student groups like Asian American Students United, another group called Viet Lead. They're working in the context of this broader movement of funding for public education overall and supporting public education. And, I think there are certain campaigns and movements that lend itself to that more, I won't say automatically, but, more naturally than others. And I think something like public ed is an example where they're organizing in that context of other people in their same situation of going to underfunded public schools. And, they're fighting under that heading with other people for those same things. And at the same time, these organizations allow them to pursue certain specific problems that they might be facing in that context, such as, I think I remember recently them doing campaigns around anti-Asian bullying in schools. But they're kind of doing that with the message of like, our schools need to be safer overall through more funding to deal with these issues, not in the sense of like, we're attacking Black students who might be bullying Asian students, if you know what I mean. So that kind of goes back to what campaigns are we choosing that kind of imply solidarity already and make that easier to take up. And, and that honestly, that takes me back I hate to like kind of shoehorn this in there, but even to the Bernie Sanders campaign around those kind of issues put us on better terrain to build solidarity with each other. Some issues lend itself to that and some issues don't. And I think what Jason's kind of getting to, how the media narrative has changed. And like Touré Reed has said this recently, and I know it sounds kind of conspiratorial, but it's like, you know, right after Bernie, when that campaign successfully raised issues of inequality in different forms consistently, you know, now after him, they're pivoting. And I think, you know, and that allows like Amazon to donate millions of dollars to these social justice organizations, again, many nonprofits and NGOs, but allows them to pivot away from that and turn everything back into what they call the Great Awakening, you know, in different ways. So I think you're kind of witnessing this pivot, and like they finally got the opportunity to do this now that the election is over, you know, and the issues Bernie was raising are not still there. But yeah, I think that question of how to be doing this work in solidarity, I think certain movements and campaigns lend itself to that, such as things that everyone were kind of in this together fighting for, such as public education.
And I don't know if, you know, I feel like just even hitting the point of like the importance of creating a community that is safe, even, you know, like if you're going for a specific group, safe for, you know, some specific community, but as far as the goal or where you're trying to get to is something that's actually beneficial to all, right? So like you're saying, you know, like what was the Viet Lead? I'm sure that group, you know, that organization was largely, you know, probably coalition of Vietnamese Americans. However, you're saying like they're organizing, the goal is something that's broad brush strokes, you know, and I think that's, you know, I don't know, basically the difference in radical organizations, you know, that going back to, you know, Fred Hampton, Rainbow Coalition type stuff, where having to organize and create a safe place for a certain community does not stop you working in solidarity.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of working in solidarity, Sora, you have a very storied history with a extremely popular media figure, Van Jones.
I mean, all I can say was when I was a student activist, you know, Van Jones came onto campus with his group Storm and really tried to, you know, take over what the students had organized. And that's about as far as my interaction with him goes.
That's not what you said. You cussed him out.
Just to say that he has a, you know, his ascendancy, both politically and in terms of his media presence, goes way back and is very much on the backs of the actual people involved in organizing these confrontations. You know, for us, it was the university. We were defending, you know, the sort of history of third world liberation and the Department of Ethnic Studies at that time. This was 1998 or something like that. And so that's all I have to say, really.
Oh,
it's a nice way of saying what I said to you.
Dylan came on the show and definitely went on a bit of a tirade similar to yours that I found extremely entertaining and hilarious. And I'm saddened to the fact that the world will never get to hear Dr. Han curse like a sailor.
Is this when he was pretending to be a Maoist?
Who, Van Jones?
Yeah.
Oh, well, you know, that's when he was pretending to be an abolitionist.
Oh, okay.
He does have I don't know much about Van Jones, but like he does kind of very interestingly try to play every side, you know, and really like position himself in so many
definition of a politician.
Right.
Sorry.
But he does it. It's kind of strange.
Sora was all mad. She goes, "Who takes anyone seriously with a lisp?"
He's worked on it though since then.
It was worse before. It was worse before. Sora?
Yeah. Like I said, there's a lot of work that goes into preparing people to come onto these media platforms.
Listen, not that we want to spend the afternoon talking about.
Yes, let's not, Pascal.
Right. But I mean, to reduce it, he just represents a typical kind of careerist, neoliberal, I call them Negro liberal posturing of a lot of people who want to use diversity to leverage themselves more effectively in the hierarchy of the ruling class. I mean, that's just the bottom line, man. He's a different type of race pimp.
Here.
Well said.
Dylan says he backs you on this story. Dylan came in. We had a Patreon conversation about this experience because I met Dylan through Sora, and we had on Patreon, part of a podcast Dylan and I did. I asked him about this encounter with these encounters with Van Jones, because I forget how me and Sora started talking about it. And don't let this demeanor fool you. This woman is mean.
She's not mean at all. She's perfectly charming. She's very, very kind. She's giving us thought-provoking questions and answers.
And I've seen her yell at her kids.
I mean, that's what good teachers do. I mean,
I'm being a good mom.
Oh, your own kids, not your
own kids.
Never mind. I take that back.
Not like Kirk Franklin though.
No, I think Paul and
she's like, Sora's like, what are you talking about? I mean,
I have no idea.
You don't know Kirk Franklin?
Internal cultural humor. There was an audio of Kirk Franklin, who's a famous gospel singer, preacher as well, cursing at his 33-year-old son, and it's like some crazy, it's like insane, like Sanford and Son level, like cursing with like all kinds of nonsense, like, boy, I'll break your neck. Nigga, I made you. I mean, he just going all. It's very non-preacherly, non-gospel Christian-y type of Christianity.
Speaking of, I mean, didn't Pascal go to school with Salt and Pepper?
No, I didn't go to school.
Sorry, I had to bring up last show's humor.
I see the Jacobin Schmickers got jokes right now.
Wait, Sora, before you go, we have to give you a dose of. I'm not going to get into that, but we're just going to hit you with some black shit. By the way, Sora came with me to go see Friday. Do you remember that?
like in theaters.
In the theaters, yes.
Yes.
I think it was me, you, and Will Lou. You, your sister, and Will Lou.
I was just thinking, I'm like, they're showing it again in theaters? They're rerunning it? No. I mean, I got to go see that.
Nice.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Oh my God. Hold on. I found it. Oh no. Can you guys see
Oh
that?
no.
Parker,
What are you going to
Parker.
show?
Hold on.
Okay, if you think I'm bringing this paper, let me say it like this. When your bitch ass starts getting some shit and disrespected, you need to get your skinny motherfucking ass back out the goddamn way before I put my foot in your ass. Because I dare you. I dare you. I dare you. I dare you. Shut the fuck up. I'm old. What's up? I will punch your neck, nigga. Don't you ever disrespect me. I did it.
Oh,
That's Kirk Franklin.
oh my
God's
God.
love. That's God's love.
Say, I will break your neck, nigga.
That's God's love.
Wow.
Right. I mean, he said, I dare you.
Yeah, as a being raised in a Christian household, that is how I experience God's love. Is that not how? Is that not?
That is what God
You hear
intended.
one thing and you hear one thing Sunday morning, and you get a whole nother thing the whole rest of the week. That's
I mean, Sunday morning is New Testament, and at home is Old Testament.
the fire and brimstone.
Oh. I had to talk my oldest son. who actually is a really good kid. He at one point got out of line with me, and I told him I
You
get
break
up
his neck.
Well, I told myself I get up in the morning and exercise every day so I can stay in shape to fuck you up.
No. Let him know.
Go
ready to go night night.
Like, just so you know, little nigga, I'd get ready. I'd wait for the day when you want to.
Never stop being prepared to put your ass to sleep.
we I don't know. I'm not gonna say the guy's name, but we have a friend from school that his dad, he got out of line with his dad, and his dad punched him in the chest. And he said his dad punched him so hard in the chest that he felt that the life.
Why are we encouraging all of this kind of verbal and physical abuse of the children?
I mean, we're not encouraging it. I don't know. We're letting it be known.
Testimony to our own experiences.
Right.
I'm speaking my truth. I'm speaking my truth.
I mean, I growing up in an anti-Christian communist household, I had a version of that, so it's not completely unfamiliar.
Wow, so you were getting spanked with Miles' red book? Is that what you're saying?
That's right. To his dad, my dad's like, you gotta have a principle. So yes, and it's not unfamiliar. Not unfamiliar. But
who recorded me yelling at my son?
The principle is whoop that ass. That's the one principle of communism.
Yes.
Oh man.
So.
Oh shit. So apparently Ben Dixon's coming on in like a little less than 20 minutes, and that poor man is walking into some shit.
Does he know what he's walking into? I guess. Has he watched the show yet? Or
some leftist ass niggas, the leftist ass niggas talking pots.
Right. Schmigga Saturday.
Schmigga Saturday.
Right.
So until I played that clip, real talk, I hadn't heard this Kirk Franklin shit. I hadn't heard anything about it.
I never heard it either. But
you know who Kirk Franklin is, right, Paul?
Yeah.
Okay.
I love how I'm just the young guy. You think I don't know anything.
I do. But that's fine. Because who knows Kirk Franklin? That's old black people.
There's something really, really deep in that. Right, this exposure between what goes on in the privacy of one's home, or sort of behind the Zoom screen, or outside of the Zoom box, and then how we present ourselves when we're engaging. It's not unlike what you were talking about earlier, which is that comment made by the sort of public relations sort of police officer. I can't remember what position he actually had, who said that that Long was just having a bad day, right? That the slip of who we actually are in our private lives that comes out in a discourse that explains a lot about what we're able to do politically, what we're able to imagine politically. That it's another piece of evidence about how part of this terrain of struggle is precisely those privatized spaces. And I just don't know, in this moment, in this sort of technology mediated moment, this completely sort of neoliberal moment where capital dominates all, right? Whether exposing it is helpful in any way, shape, or form.
That's an interesting question. Is that in the age of digital technology, does private space even exist? Can it exist? Right?
No, because his son snitched him out. We always talking about snitch. Ain't nobody snitching. That motherfucker snitched his daddy the fuck out. I'm gonna put your ass on World Star, Daddy. Take that, church man.
And even to play off what you're saying, Sora, is that also combined with that in the digital space, we have this kind of Instagramification of life that everyone wants to be like, strike a pose, take a picture,
right? And that plays out
kind of like.
Go ahead, Paul.
Oh, sorry. Pascal was freezing. I didn't. Oh, okay. But I was saying that plays out. I mean, going back to, you know, non-profitization of movements, and like, you know, obviously social media is a tool that can be used for organizing. We've seen it be used in different ways, but like it also allows people to just claim leadership by just being on social media or using it in a certain way. And I mean, I'd be interested to talk with Ben about this more, and everyone, when it comes to Black Lives Matter. But it's like, I mean, Adolph Reed has said this all the time, like whoever can get in front of a camera is a leader. And then you have DeRay McKesson, great example. He was able to pose as the leader without really having to prove or really show that is true. And I know I brought this up when I was here last weekend, but take someone like A. Philip Randolph, who was not really seen as a, quote, Black leader or labor leader until after he organized the Porters, which was a Herculean task. It took him 12 years to do that.
Yeah.
Only then, when he had proven, I have a constituency that I've helped to organize, is he seen as a leader. And it's like, whereas DeRay, he runs for mayor and gets something like 1%, which exposes that however popular you're on social media, what is your base? So, I mean, and I think that plays out a lot in this like nonprofit organizing, is like when it's social media driven, you kind of get to just like pose as a leader very easily. But, you know, where's the substance of what you've delivered or what your base is? Having to show that you have a base through organizing, that's something nonprofits don't really do.
Have you heard the old Langston Hughes quote?
What's that?
Oh, black man in a suit with for $10 in his pocket.
Any with $5 in his pocket and a new suit could be a black leader.
Right.
Damn.
Yeah.
I mean,
so the
Paul,
question has been,
What is it now? But how do you change that for any Negro with?
I mean,
good
followers you have.
Good Wi-Fi and a podcast.
Right.
Yeah,
Good
I mean,
Wi-Fi and
is that who we asked Ben? Is that something that we're prepared then for? Answer for this. Is this what the secret is? Because I don't know.
Sorry, you have no idea who Ben Dixon is, huh?
I don't. I am not really on. Yeah, I'm not on the sort of social media circuit. Really.
Reading the books, doing the research, writing the articles.
Yeah.
She is watching the Kardashians and yelling at kids.
I mean, Paul, you're suggesting, you're asking a question of like, is it possible for us to create spaces where we have a leaderless or anti-leader social mobilization? Yeah.
Well,
what kind of energy enables that? And I think that there are examples of that, but it's a very urgent thing.
I don't quite believe in leaderlessness. I'm just saying, like, a leader. I actually believe that there has to be some kind of leadership, but I think a leadership that's accountable or has shown legitimate reasons to be a leader, or is recognized by the constituency.
Chosen by the constituency,
right? Or I mean, a great example is Randolph repeatedly won elections in the brother of sleeping car porters, and so it's fine. I'm not saying the union should not have had a leadership; they should have, but I'm saying like he has shown that, and to be recognized as a black leader, he could point to the results of the Fair Employment Practices Commission, Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act. It's like, that's what I've done. That's what I've been a part of. So I'm not really even a believer in like leaderlessness in that sense, but I'm just saying like the leader has to be tied to a base and to some achievements to point to, I was about to say something real spicy, but I don't know.
Go for it. Go for it.
This is where you can be spicy. Here's the thing. Okay, so this is the question I ask about someone like Malcolm X. Because not to ignore the power that he had and as a symbol, and especially someone.
Here comes the mulatto Schmiga.
Hear me out. I mean, it's not even like an anti-Malcolm X thing, but I'm saying like when we think of him as a leader, clearly, his ability to articulate what was going on and as a voice and a symbol. But again, what was the legacy in terms of achievements or an organized base? I mean, we can look at the legacy of the Civil Rights New Deal period, and we can criticize that, but we can point to the concrete achievements. With Malcolm X, it's like, I mean, while he was with the nation, and we all know that he evolved over time, and that should be recognized, but spent most of his time criticizing the civil rights movement and the people that were risking their lives and getting killed in the struggle. And he eventually comes around to actually believing, no, like, we need to be in the struggle. By the very end of his life, he's supporting, you know, the movement in Selma for the Voting Rights Act. And it's like, all right, I mean, by the end of your life, you came around to the position that people had been at and been fighting and been winning. You know, that, I mean, that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying like, oh, I hate Malcolm X, but like, how do we evaluate him as a leader compared to others who? Sorry,
if you read Kwame Ture, formerly Stokely Carmichael's Ready for Revolution, he suggests in the book that towards the end of his life that Malcolm X was actually considering a union with SNCC, that he was actually trying to move in the direction of working with institutions in the traditional civil rights movement. But to ask you what was his legacy, I would argue that Malcolm X directly is the ideological father of what becomes the Black Panther Party. Right. In that you know, his arguments towards internationalism, his arguments towards self-defense, and his actual theorization of Black revolutionary, international revolutionary solidarity is something that becomes manifested in the Black Panther Party. Now, if we want to argue whether or not that is a policy legacy that we should, regard as significant, that's another debate. But I would not make the argument that Malcolm X does not have a legacy in terms of affecting Black social and political activity, even after his death. I would say it's a different type of legacy than the traditional civil rights movement. But if we're going to use that to say what was his legacy, well, we can say the same thing about Hubert Harrison. We can say the same thing about, there's a variety.
I think all those questions should be asked,
there are a variety of.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
There are a variety of figures of Black left or not even left who have been important in terms of, Black politics and Black radical politics, who may not have necessarily gotten the political administration at that time to change the status quo. But at the same time, did they leave an ideological foundation for people who followed them to take their ideas to really, really challenge politics? I mean, at the same time, you could say Hubert Harrison did not, change politics per se, but guided many people, many Blacks to socialism. I mean, his importance, I think, is significant. So I'm not saying I disagree with your analysis, Paul. What I'm saying is I don't know if you want to use that as a barometer to judge historical figures. I'm up for debate on that.
I don't know how me and Teray were talking about this. I think he said, was it Thurgood Marshall towards the end of his when he was retiring, he was asked something about Malcolm X.
He said he doesn't. Yeah, and he said he doesn't understand why he's considered a great Black man, a great Black leader.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Dr. Han, for finally coming on the show. I haven't physically seen you, but seeing you, this is my first time seeing you on any sort of screen in probably 4 years.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Yeah, I don't even know how to count now, but thank you all for having me. This was one of the most honest discussions I've had about recent events, but also about how we really kind of forge spaces to think revolution, enact revolution, with a lot of humor and yeah.
So that's Will Lou says.
It was
hey,
everything that I was hoping it would be.
So Will says, "What's up?"
Oh, that's Coach Will. Hey, Coach Will.
That's Will.
Yeah. I look forward to talking with you all again.
I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope it wasn't too painful.
No, it was absolutely enjoyable, and I think you're asking all the right questions, and I'm just honored that you would include me in it.
Well, it's a long time coming. Tell everybody I said hello. I will be hopefully getting the vaccine sooner than later, and we can all hang out and go back to grading papers and giving white people Fs.
It's right. Okay, I'm gonna get off, but I'm gonna actually put you all on in my kitchen as I cook my kids breakfast and listen to the rest of the show.
Oh, are them badass kids there?
They're somewhere around.
Okay. Well, tell them
Yeah.
they're old now.
Take care, Pascal, Marcus.
Bye. It was nice meeting you. Thank you
Bye.
for coming.
Nice meeting you.
So that is good friend from school. What did Will? Will is so stupid.
Did we lose the Jacobin Schmigger?
He's having issues with his computer right now. He said he's got to plug it in. So Will says, so have we made a consensus on black and yellow unity or not? Pascal, this is my boy Will. That's the basketball coach that came on when we did the show with the sports show.
Paul, I sense you wanted to clap back against my argument. I'm open.
Oh,
for
sorry.
debate.
My computer died and the outlet wasn't working, so I just figured that out.
That was Malcolm X fucking with you.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I think that what I was bringing up is like that's often not really talked about with Malcolm X, like evaluating him. And I even think that what you were saying, like he was the ideological like father of what would become Black Power, and I think we need to question that legacy.
Oh, definitely. I'm up for that debate.
It's like, and I think, I don't know. Like I said, you got to prove the legacy and like what has been achieved, and I think that's the same on the same side of the coin with Hubert Harrison. I mean, we talk about Phil Randolph more than Hubert Harrison, and I think there's a good reason for that.
Yeah, well, it doesn't help that Hubert Harrison died when he was like 44.
Yeah, right.
Really,
right.
But I mean, I guess still there's like, is that what we talk a whole lot about Fred Hampton though? Is it just because of the amount of people and the bodies he was able to actually galvanize, get into a room and then do some actionable shit? I guess to Paul's point, it's like, yeah. I mean, I guess there is a question. Why is Malcolm X lifted up if he wasn't able to move bodies in a room out there, like move bodies on the street, like some of the other leaders we hold up. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, part of it, I think I was going to say that part of it, I think is, like you were saying, aesthetics,
right.
Like we are human beings and we buy into, good looking, good sounding shit.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that's something that Malcolm X understood before he was Malcolm X.
Did somebody asked, does Malcolm X have ties to modern day Black Israelites? I don't believe so.
No, I don't have any evidence of that.
I don't want to put that on him or anyone related to him.
But I mean, again, Paul, I don't want you to think that I'm someone who thinks that, historical figures, Black or otherwise, are above critique or challenge or should be romanticized,
right?
Or should not be. I'm not that. I think Jason attests to the fact that I'm not that guy at all. I try to complicate all of this stuff,
right?
And but I think that to make the argument that these figures, I mean, for example, if you read David Walker's Appeal, which is a book calling to arms that was written in the 19th century. You could say, well, David Walker's Appeal was irrelevant; it didn't cause a movement. I think that the ideological foundation of David Walker's Appeal was very important. I mean, I think that having an early 19th century piece of Black writing in which a man is calling for his fellow brethren and race to challenge, what at that time was true white supremacy in slavery is powerful. If you guys haven't read David Walker's Appeal, I'd suggest you check it out. It's a very, very powerful piece of writing. I
assigned it to my students, or at least excerpts.
Oh, no shit. You got some smart ass kids. You teaching one of them advanced classes?
No, I mean, you can teach anything if you expose it, break it down.
I mean, you could ask the same question about
the whole entire thing, but
the great socialist anarchist Lucy Parsons. I mean, she lived a long policy legacy that changed the world. I mean, this woman was a radical, revolutionary, anti-capitalist who I think should be lifted up. I don't think we should necessarily question her bona fides to say it was like, well, she didn't necessarily lead to a movement that changed the policy realities for Black folk. again, Paul, I'm not trying to bang hard
Well,
against her. It's just that I don't necessarily think.
Well, hold on, fellas. Let's
it's
switch
one
up
thing. I just.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I think my computer's freezing, so there's a delay.
Okay, what I was saying was our guest is here.
Okay.
He has a very I see the chair, but I don't see him. So if he's gonna fly in it, that'd be pretty cool. That'd be some dope shit. There he goes. So he has a very popular podcast on YouTube, the Ben Dixon Show. You can also catch him. I think it's every Friday on the Majority Report. He's on everybody's podcast. And
mornings on Twitch as well. You know, like I gotta throw out.
Oh yeah, sorry, Marcus is on that Twitch shit. Yeah. Video games. Yeah.
Twitch, man.
Who uses Twitch?
The kids.
Twitch is the man.
Right.
Coming all the way live from the ATL. The brother with maybe the best lighting in the game, Ben Dixon.
I had my light on. I don't have the right lights on. Hey, everybody, I'm so sorry. I am late. Thank y'all so much for having me.
No. It's all that. Thank you for coming on.
Always right on time.
Yeah, it's fine. Good. We're all black, so being late is kind of what we do. We started the show 3 minutes late. We're gonna just be late. We were talking about beating kids earlier. It's all fucked up.
I had to run and go get my kids situated. So we all on the same page.
Oh, you had to situated, right?
Yeah.
Situated.
On this motherfucking.
Exactly.
I was hoping. I wish we should have held the Kirk Franklin clip. Because Ben, I gotta say.
Ben?
I absolutely I am like high key Kirk Franklin's biggest fan. I'm sorry. Like
Are you a gospel cat?
Yeah. No, I mean everything I do like now, my whole skill set was refined in the black church. I just couldn't stay in the black church. It just wasn't working out for me. But the best thing that came out of it for me was Kirk. So when I saw the clip, I'm like, oh man, they're gonna try to cancel my dude. And then I listened to the clip and I was like, yeah, it sounds about how you have to talk to a grown man.
I'm like, if they're canceling him, then they're canceling a lot of people.
It's like, don't get me wrong, like my kids are way too small. Like I don't even think I let them hear me say hell or damn yet. But if you're 33 years old and you coming at me like but my thing is, and I'm sorry, I'm just running my mouth, but what does it take? Like what happened in that relationship? Because for me to have to go at my son like that means that's been some long standing shit that's been going on in that family. So anyway.
I don't know if you guys remember. Oh God, maybe I'd be shocked if Marcus and Paul remember this because this might have been the early 2000s, late 90s. Alec Baldwin cussed his daughter out, and she saved the voicemail message. And she had sent the voicemail message out, and this is the daughter he had, I believe, with Kim Basinger. So he was yelling at her, basically saying what she was gonna do. Like, you're gonna do this, and your mom. This is the kind of shit y'all do, and you do this shit just like your mama. Just cursing her out, and it's man. I think we'd be surprised at what rich kids do, because Kirk Franklin didn't grow up rich, right?
Nah, he grew up the hard way, like most of us did, and so he got a first generation rich kid. So
yeah, so they probably said some dumb shit to him, and he was probably like, "Boy," at 33 too.
I just want somebody to sample the ever part. That shit was like, but I want them to sample it for real and put it on a real beat. I thought Sway the remix guy would like really do it. Nah, man, that sample is just waiting to be remixed.
I told these cats I hadn't heard the shit until Pascal brought it up. So
I always kind of thought Kirk Franklin was interesting, man. I mean, he never really bothered. His music was okay. He makes that kind of gospel music that has pop culture appeal. He's definitely not one of the larger offenders on the black church scene, like some of the other cats, the Prosperity Pimps and all that other stuff.
Yeah, Creflo Dollar.
I mean, I thought the whole thing was kind of funny, and then all of a sudden it became a big morality play in black social media spaces. Of like, do we really, should we really talk to our kids this way? And I was like, why can't it just be about Kirk Franklin's kid? Why does this have to be some kind of statement on black parenting? I was like, Kirk Franklin doesn't represent how me or anyone I know talks to. I don't have any kids, but people who have kids. You know, he represents his, and obviously he's got some kind of this clearly, you know, to play off what Ben Dixon, what Ben was saying. There's a long trauma there, man. There's a long trauma between him and his son that is problematic. And I just hope my man works it out. He apologized, so obviously he found there was a problem. But it's amazing how in the age of social media, everything becomes this kind of existential phenomenon of how we, quote unquote, when you know who we have to evaluate ourselves and the us, and you know, and I think that I'm always one, and I think Paul would agree with me, is that I always try to complicate the narrative of there being a we in the first place, because I'm like, you know, I didn't get the invitation to like when we discussed these issues, you know what I'm saying? I made that comment when we had this whole, you know,
you missed that convention.
That's what I'm saying. Hey, check the mailbox
with the black agenda, or this one with the black agenda. I was like, y'all ever notice how black people are never the ones who get to discuss what's on the black agenda, except the one presenting the black agenda?
It's like a Nielsen box.
And I actually, I'm very curious, Ben, because of what you've kind of, you know, built with not only yourself but other black people, and I know that like, you have kind of a string of shows, and you know, and from what I've seen, I intend to, you know, build that out even more. But you know, kind of like what Pascal was saying is, how do you yourself, but you know, I guess the rest of us here too, how do we keep ourselves grounded and not speaking for black, you know, doing that whole blanket type thing,
racial ventriloquism?
Yeah,
right.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, man. I don't speak for nobody, man. I just speak for whatever the truth is as I see it. And what I've learned, let me go back to who actually I learned this from. And I kind of hate to have to give credit to this brother, because sometimes he is extremely, extremely problematic. But high key, Boyce Watkins was the very first person in this space to give me anything like to even just answer an email, right? And early on, like I got a lot of YouTube videos that I did with him, because like he was the only person who would even listen. And I was like, brother, how do you navigate all these different angles of blackness? Like, and he said, I don't. He said, there's no one way to be black. That's been my motto for it's no one way to be black. And so that has been the centerpiece of my thinking. I don't try to speak on behalf of any black. I'm black. Y'all black. We black. And so whatever we're fighting for, it's what we're fighting for, as long as we're not fighting against blackness. Now, we got some black folks out there who are literally trying to sabotage and undermine the liberation of our people. Now, those people, I got a problem with their blackness. But
and I wanted to ask you about that, about these black people, and I don't remember if I sent you the video.
What do you mean, like these people?
No, those.
Or those?
Oh,
okay.
yeah, no,
those. Okay. Now, I just...
actually, Sora, of all people that sent me this video that I ended up sending to all you guys, Sora is the one that sent it to me initially. It's the video. The Root had it, and it's the Instagram video of the woman. Did she start Black Lives Matter?
Melina Abdullah. No, she's one of the founders of the LA chapter.
Sorry.
Of Black Lives Matter.
And Tamir Rice's mom, and who was the other mom?
Well, this is a great topic. I'm glad you brought this up.
Yeah, that's what. Look, we all black people is here now.
You're gonna put me in the bind here. Let's go. Let's do it. Shit.
So
I mean,
we call this interview
actually,
show
I was
rat.
reading it. So my homegirl sends it to me, right? Who just left the show. I don't know if you got to check any of it out. She just left the whole thing. And she sent this to me the other night, and she was kind of like, look at this shit. And she's in a similar space with these people because she's a professor down south at UC Irvine. And to see that these mothers of these slain children, some of them are hurting for money. They're seeing these foundations bring in millions, right? literally merchandising their kids' death. Then on top of that, what really hurt me is when she said the lawyer, Benjamin Crump, and I'll say his name because I don't know the brother, and I'm sure he'll never come on here, who just seems to show up whenever somebody colored dies. He even showed up when this shit happened in Atlanta. He had a statement to say, and to see her say he didn't know jack shit about law in Ohio, and I had to fire him because he was fucking up the case.
That blew me. That blew me.
And it really hurt me because they had at the end of the fucking thing, which it was, I won't even call it an article. It was just somebody clowning on a media site. They had a Venmo because one of the moms is facing possible eviction.
Man.
So you saw that?
I saw the entire 30 minutes, and the thing that crushed me was Tamir Rice's mother having to make the choice between staying with her two older kids who were handcuffed with the police or going with 12-year-old Tamir to the house. And that just but in the context of the question that you how you're posing it, I think one of the things that may have been forgotten in this process is the service that's necessary to, like, if what we do is glamorous. I don't care what nobody say. Like this I got a dope ass camera.
You do.
Got good lighting.
You do.
And people retweeting me, and I got famous people who are and I frame now. If I move this camera to the left or to the right or down, y'all gonna be like, that nigga need to clean his house. Putting that aside. I know how to frame this bitch.
I was gonna back myself into a corner.
Yeah, exactly. But we gotta remember, man, that, and this is why I don't cover a lot of police brutality stories, because it does two things to me. One, it makes me want to go hurt somebody. So for me, spiritually and emotionally, I'm just not in the place where I can actually absorb that shit anymore. But then two, I don't want to get clicks off of Black suffering. I tell my team don't share those videos. I don't want the clicks. I know somebody else will do it. Somebody else will share it and get the word. I don't want the clicks because I don't want the glamour of what we do to sully this real work that's being done out here. You know what I mean? So I think that there's some people in the movement who didn't get that memo. And the other memo that they didn't get was, if y'all get in the bag, y'all need to make sure everybody else is getting something. There should not be a single goddamn parent who has lost a child who wants for anything, especially when you built your brand off their bodies.
Built your brand off there. I mean, we were talking about that a little bit earlier with the new. Go ahead.
I was gonna say. I mean, it's like a lot of what I just said earlier could be copy and pasted on to this. Bring it. Well, this is the problem with, kind of social media fueled nonprofits posing as a movement, and even within Black Lives Matter, they use the term brand a lot. And it's like, why is this a brand? But I mean, the video, I don't know if we're talking about the same video, but Jason, what you showed me with the
same one.
Right. I mean, you could see how she, was trying to insulate from any criticism by saying, well, if you're criticizing us, either you are doing it for ego, for the state, or you are, misled by agents of the state. And clearly, to me, the implication was Tamir Rice's was misled. But you see how that just insulates from criticism. There can be no criticism unless you're an enemy, which is the oldest rhetorical trick in the book, but that's what she was using.
I mean, listen, man. The fact that this woman, Professor Melina Abdullah, suggested that Tamir Rice's mother was a Fed because she was criticizing people who are using her child's name. Well, she said when you are saying either this or you must be being used by the state, what does that mean? What does that mean? You're basically saying that this woman she's a fed. She's being used by the state. That's
I missed that part.
man.
Yeah, that's what she said. Yeah,
I totally missed that.
Yeah. She didn't directly say Tamir Rice's mother, but it was clear when you know the backstory.
Who else was she talking about?
Right.
You know.
Well, it's like it's like anybody who critiques,
the blanket statement was that if you're by criticizing the movement or challenging it, you must be working for the state, which is funny to me because I know people on the left who accuse them of working for the state. Quite frankly.
Yep.
People like throwing that around.
That's the number one left critique. Everyone, if you don't like me,
they get Ford Foundation money. They work with institutions within the Democratic Party. They meet with political operatives all the time. And you're going to accuse people who are challenging your so-called organization or quote unquote movement of working for the state. I mean, this is absurd, man. That's really talk about hubris.
It blew me away. It blew me away.
This is the same one who was talking about do you remember when they were talking about Black Lives Matter credit cards or banking cards a few years back? That was coming out of the LA chapter.
My God.
What the?
Oh yeah, that was a thing.
And there was one chapter, I forget where, I think one BLM chapter about helping people flip homes and stuff like that. I'm like,
help people flip homes.
What? Yeah.
And also, I mean,
the Black Lives Matter landlord program, is that something that they tried to start up too?
I will find the link and send it to you. Not right now, but I swear I'm not making this up. But when in that rant in that video, I mean, also what struck me was just the lack of substance. I didn't hear anything of a political program in there. Unlike, I know I always bring up A. Phil Randolph, but he is the GOAT, so I'm going to keep bringing him up. But, unlike when it was talked about before in the sense of anti-discrimination law, full employment, raising the minimum wage, I didn't hear anything of a program in that whole rant, except a vague thing about Black liberation, vaguely. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I mean, I'm just always struck by just total lack of substance. So I don't know. Throw that out there.
Let me ask. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ben.
No, I'm so out of pocket. No, what I was going to say is so out of pocket. Give me about
this
5 minutes.
This is where this is
I just realized I had this same jersey on, this same hoodie on yesterday. I need to go.
Hey, that's fine. That's fine.
I'm looking at a video just came across my screen. Yes, and I'm like, damn it! I did not even. I told you I was out of pocket. We couldn't let that.
German footwear is okay, man. It's not a problem. Rock with the Puma shirt.
But what y'all saying? I had not heard. I missed all these conversations. I did not hear that criticism of them saying that's not even a criticism. That's below the belt to even insinuate that a sister who's my son is 10. I am terrified of my son going anywhere without me, but it's just not possible, right? I got to send my kids out into this world, and y'all gonna make it seem like they are fed because they're upset about something they should be upset about. They should be upset about these things. If you listen to that interview, how could you not identify with their anger?
What also hurt me too, I don't know if you guys feel the same way about it from a sports perspective, is I feel like, and this might get me into some trouble because I actually know people in his camp. I feel like when Kaepernick was sitting, it was really about what he was sitting about. And then by the time all the kneeling and shit came into play and he's having sit downs with Green Berets, kind of sort of became about him and his fight against the NFL and less about what he was really mad about, which he's gone on to actually do real work with, right? Police violence, education, even did shit with Palestine. And then you see the NFL kind of go ahead and now they co-opt that shit. Everybody can put I like colored people on the back of their helmet. The end zone is like, we love niggas. You know what we're gonna do when you guys get a touchdown? You niggas, we used to give you penalties for all the dancing. Please get a synchronized routine of niggerdom in the end zone.
Because racial grievance discourse is hot and profitable right now.
Because there's going to be a whole line of Judas and the Messiah, Black Panther, Fred Hampton hoodies.
Well, and I feel like the difficult thing though is that some of the, even with Judas and the Black Messiah, and then whatever the Marcus Garvey one, it's all centered on the snitch.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, I know we've talked about Judas and the Black Messiah specifically, and like kind of how that movie came about, but I think, you know, part of it is realizing that a lot of the media that we just take in is meant to do, you know, these things, whether it's whitewash our history, pacify the way that we view our own just violent society. Yeah, it's all kind of baked in. And then, there's some that we were talking about with Sora, but like, no matter what tragedy, you know, befalls our society, you know, today, you can just be hell bent that the media class is gonna try and wrap it up in one box, but then also too, you're gonna have your crumps or whoever, you know, you're gonna have the people that say, you know, let me just shake every last nickel out of this crisis.
Well, I mean, for me, right? I am always circumspect about the way the Black image is used and rendered in media spaces and popular culture. And I think that anyone who has even a basic understanding of the history and the way in which Black people have been depicted in media historically, even prior to the Civil Rights Movement, can understand why that's the case. But one of the things that I would implore all of us is to understand how this utility of the Black image in the post-civil rights era really kicks off. And if any of you have not done, I would suggest you read the Kerner Commission report from 1968 that Lyndon Johnson actually requested to study the urban rebellions or riots that were going on. We got to remember that between 67 and 71, we have 300 urban rebellions that happened throughout the country. And this is, if you guys will indulge me, I wrote an article called The Black Godfathers of Black Agenda Report, and I had a piece from the actual Kerner Commission report. And if you will indulge me, I'd like to read this and to understand that this is part of the reason why I have that kind of circumspect attitude towards the way media depicts Black people. This segment is called "The Negro in Media." Finally, this is in the Kerner Commission report. This is a federal report studying how to neutralize Black rebellious consciousness. The Negro in Media. Finally, the news media must publish newspapers and produce programs that recognize the existence and activities of the Negro both as a Negro and as a part of the community. It would be a contribution of inestimable importance to race relations in the United States simply to treat ordinary news about Negroes as news of other groups is now treated. Specifically, newspapers should integrate Negroes and Negro activities in all parts of the paper, from the news, society, and club pages to the comic strips. Television should develop programming which integrates Negroes into all aspects of televised presentations. Television is such a visible medium that some constructive steps are easy and obvious. While some of these steps are being taken, they are still largely neglected. For example, Negro reporters and performers should appear more frequently and on prime time in news broadcasts and weather shows, in documentaries and in advertisements. Some effort has already been made to use Negroes in television commercials. Any initial surprise at seeing a Negro selling a sponsor's product will eventually fade into routine acceptance, an attitude that white society must ultimately develop towards all Negroes. In addition to news-related programming, we think that Negroes should appear more frequently in dramatic and comedy series. Moreover, networks and local stations should present plays and other programs whose subjects are rooted in the ghetto and its problems. Now, do you think it's a surprise that within 5 years you see shows like Good Times and Soul Train, and you see programs like, all of the Black Affairs television that pop up in 1968, the year this actual report comes about?
Somebody's asking where they can get. I'll put a link up to Pascal's piece on Black Agenda Report, actually, so people can see it. I'll post it in the chat for everybody. It's You know, reading your piece, I've read your piece quite a few times actually, and then every time I read it, I have to go watch that documentary, The Black Godfather on Netflix. Have you seen that, Ben?
No, I haven't. No.
Oh, no shit.
I need to catch up.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
you got to watch more Black television.
I just don't watch. I don't watch a lot of TV at all, man. I just honestly, it's I'm behind on everything. I don't even. Matter of fact, I just reconnected my Netflix account, so I know there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people who are upset because I have I think I got 100. But I'm a communist when it comes to that Netflix password. I probably got 100 people who are depending on me reading up. So I'm behind on everything.
It's an interesting documentary, and it doesn't really talk about what Pascal points out. But if you read Pascal's article, and then Ben just disappeared.
It's been happening to me. I keep losing connection, but
okay, he's back now.
Lost me. It's my bad.
Yeah,
I was like, I didn't know who was going. Was it me or you guys? Okay, here we go.
When you read Pascal's piece and then you actually go watch The Black Godfather, you really see this man that was not just a power player in media and television and music. He started Solar Records. So Sherelle, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Yeah.
And he also got involved in politics to the point where Bill Clinton's in the documentary saying we couldn't get elected without him. Barack Obama is in the documentary saying we couldn't get elected without him. His daughter is in the documentary. She got a job as an ambassador to some fucking island, like Grenada or some shit. So
and the thing that's fascinating, this is a guy who gets started as being an enforcer of black talent for the mafia in the 50s.
Damn.
And he literally is a ruling class asset using black talent to facilitate political elections in the Democratic Party.
I just want to say that Touré is watching the show. Touré Reed. I don't know if you know Touré Reed, Ben.
Yeah.
You need to get him on your show, if please. But he just texted me and said Shalimar. Like, don't forget Shalimar.
But again, I mean, the larger point I was trying to make in reading that is to show me that I think that understanding the way in which popular cultural production has been an effective and important tool of social engineering reaction, not only by Americans overall, but particularly the black community. It's always distressing to me to see the extent to which, people, particularly black folk, use pop culture and media as the barometer of what reality is in black life, because it's all, and this is like, if you want to use a Marcus critique, this comes out of the Frankfurt School as well. The one-dimensional man, the reality of how capitalism uses media and imagery, so on and so forth. So this shouldn't be alien to any of us who are on the left, but I just find that it's so dangerous, particularly in the age of the Great Awakening, when we see so much capital being poured into black media cultural production, and it just rings all of these alarms in my mind. It just makes me go back right to the Kerner Commission report. I'm like, this is happening all over again, man. It's one more time.
I'm curious what you
go ahead.
So I don't disagree with anything that you guys are saying, because the evidence is in the history, right? But I was speaking to Professor Jared Ball. He comes on the show as often as I can get him on there. And his criticism, particularly of Judas and the Black Messiah, is a pretty standard one, and I understand the context. But for me, it's like, if I trace my radicalization all the way back to the origins, it was like I came out of the Black Liberation Church, so it was those seeds had been sown every time my dad got up there and started calling out white folks in the pulpit, right? But it really was the art. It was a series of movies that I saw as a kid that really kind of created. It just kind of sparked that. Like, if it's in my blood already, which it is.
Oh damn!
Do you freeze?
It's media that I consumed. Did I freeze again?
No, you're good now.
You're good now. You're good now.
You did freeze up.
Damn, my internet connection. This is Fulton County internet. We got to talk to Keisha Lance Bottoms about this shit here. But I'm be honest with you, like, I just got to admit it. Like, Malcolm X, the movie, Really, like I was 12 years old when I saw it. That shit changed my life. Like it connected the dots, like where the black church couldn't connect it. That movie, and then I saw the Mario Van Peebles at 15, Panther movie, Black Panther movie. Like that shit sparked something in me that put me on a search for more information and more knowledge, to the point that by the time I got to college, I'm like, hey, where can I, what course can I take on socialism?
Yeah.
And the political science director was like, socialism lost, so we're not teaching it here. Right. But it was, if I traced it all the way back, it was like it was the art that actually kind of sparked the fire in me that was already there, but it gave me more context and made me desire. So it's like, I guess my question to you all is to where is the threshold? Because sometimes I think Judas and the Black Messiah is going to radicalize a couple people, especially some 12-year-olds that are watching that movie, just the way Malcolm X radicalized me.
I'll say this, and I'll shut up to my panel. When Marcus, I was on Ben Burgess's show, we were watching Full Metal Jacket, and the whole panel was calling it an anti-war movie. And I said, is it? Because Marcus says when you can watch it in the mess hall in the Marines, it's not anti-war. And that's kind of how I feel about Judas and the Black Messiah. Are some kids probably going to pick up some literature after reading it? Maybe. But there was also a fervor around the Malcolm X movie. If you remember, I'm 43. I don't know how old you are.
40.
Okay, so we're about the same age.
Yeah.
I bought an X hat. I'm sure you bought an X hat. All of us went and reread you didn't have an X hat?
Nah, I didn't.
Ben got the tattoo.
I don't want to sound super poor, but I couldn't afford anything other than some hand-me-downs at that stage. So
I grew up in an area that had the bootleg spot, so
there you go. See, I was in Mississippi. We didn't have I would have had a special order that shit. I wasn't gonna be able to go to the block and just get one.
Bootleg spot is a real
Jason's hand-me-down hat. That's
But you're talking about the commercialization of it, the capitalism.
So, but it, and even if you think about
like
Malcolm
the Che Guevara t-shirts, like seriously, like
but also when you think about Che Guevara t-shirts as they come out of the late 90s, early 2000s, mainly because Jay-Z's wearing one in a very large performance he did on MTV, to the point where my son, who is 2, has a hand-me-down Che Guevara t-shirt that the person that handed it to him doesn't know who the fuck Che Guevara is. Right. And I'm not gonna like yell at him about that.
It's the dude from the t-shirt.
But they got it at fucking Target.
God damn.
Right.
So my thing is there's gonna be a handful of people, a very small handful of people, that probably try to do some research on it. But that movie was just so vague when it came to their politics that what's the first thing you're going to read? I wouldn't know what to get into. To be honest with you, what am I going to read? The Communist Manifesto? They don't really mention it. I think he says Mao's name a couple times in the movie. But it divorces the mentality of their movement as well. Because when you hear people like Elaine Brown talk about the Black Panther Party, we were a political organization. And you watch that movie, they're shooting a lot of cops, but I don't really see why they're shooting cops. We never really saw any sort of abuse from the police. Originally, that movie was written as a redemption piece for Hoover, not by Shaka King and the Lucas brothers, but by the co-writer who actually had the script, who says this in an interview, that it was originally written as a redemption piece for Hoover, and they changed some things around, and you get Black Departed. Is it an enjoyable film? Yes, it is. But at the end of the day, it's Black Departed. Paul had us watch a movie that I'm really glad he had us watch called 10,000 Black Men Named George.
Oh, did you watch that?
I did watch it.
Okay.
I remember it actually from the early 2000s. That Robert Townsend directed. And Robert Townsend is a director that really gets slept on for the things that he's done, showing the light in Hollywood about racism, and even to do a movie on A. Philip Randolph. There's no way you're going to do a movie on A. Philip Randolph and it be a Hollywood film, because A. Philip Randolph was never really a Hollywood sellable cat. Malcolm X gave the right speeches and said the right things for Spike Lee to make that movie that is cinematically beautiful.
Also,
and this gets back to what
Malcolm X was also
They're talking over light-skinned people, Pascal.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Pascal. I thought we had an agreement.
Paul, say your piece, Paul. I talk to Pascal's ass every day.
Well, I was gonna say two things. I mean, one of them. I mean, again, this gets back to like the legacy and why I brought that up earlier about Malcolm X is like, again, the legacy and the achievements and the constituency. Why is A. Philip Randolph not a household name and Malcolm X is? So I mean, that's just one thing, and that, I mean, kind of brings back to like he was not sellable. I think he wasn't sellable because he was doing more of that
real
kind of work. I mean. But anyway, then the other point, I think just all this kind of points to just how, like, I totally get what Ben's saying, that art can trigger curiosity in people and it can lead to more. But, you know, ultimately it is very limited because even let's take 10,000 Black Men Named George. Like if the organization is not there behind it or the institutions, like it won't go anywhere. Like that movie came out. When did it come out? The 90s? 2000. So, I mean, the labor movement, as weak as it's been at that point since the 1930s, even if that was a Hollywood bestseller, you know, there's not as much of a labor movement for people to go to. Like that movie itself cannot trigger that big of a transformation, if you know what I mean. So, yeah, I mean, I think if there's not an organizational outlet for people to like act on these politics, it's just kind of going to remain as art, you know, and it's just, we should just recognize there's a certain limit to that. Which doesn't, you know, eliminate the need for art, you know.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think I don't even know that we're really saying anything too different, right? You know, it's like recognizing that it's like, yeah, people can be inspired by a whole lot of different things, and I think that like absolutely, if this movie is gonna get some just children in general, but especially some young Black kids to start questioning, you know, who and what they've been dealt, you know, as far as like, who are the people, who are your heroes that you're supposed to look at, you know, what are the narratives that you're supposed to play in our society. But I think, yeah, at the end of the day, it does have its limits. And, but one thing I kind of would like to turn it to, especially since we got a Georgia representative now in the caucus, is I see Reverend Warnock as a representation of kind of like that Judah and the Black Messiah, where, hey, there's going to be a lot of inspiration out of this brother, but there's going to be some limitations.
Oh yeah.
And that's where, yeah. How do we also too, and like where he's coming from, you know, and like that the you know, Black church literally coming from the pulpit, the right. Like when Ohio State says like we're talking about the Black church,
crown jewel of the Black church.
Yeah, you know, and so I don't know. It's kind of like one of those things of being real, understanding, hey, there are some positives in this, but also saying there's a reason why Reverend Warnock was able to run in the first place, and it was because, you know, there are some things that are going to be disappointed about him.
Oh yeah, that's a fact. That's a fact.
Well, I mean, one of the reasons is because the Black church is one of the organizing operational vehicles of the Black political class. They socially control Black votes to make sure that they completely dedicated to the Democratic Party. It's one of the key institutions in that mechanism.
Which is why I'm no longer. Well, I mean, I still visit a church when it's not the pandemic, but I knew I couldn't do my work. There's literally no way. When one of the few sermons I ever preached, they came up to me afterwards and said, "Hey man, you can't be bringing that political stuff in here." I said, "Okay, then I just don't need to be here." That said, though, I would just say this in terms of the art, because if somebody didn't know, because America is set up, y'all know this, I ain't gonna tell y'all this, but just to make a broader point, like most people probably had no idea that Fred Hampton even existed, right?
I'll give you that.
And now if somebody Googles or hell goes to Twitter and does a quick search for Fred Hampton, you know, they're gonna pop up, probably come to my timeline where I just got video after video after video of him talking his real message. That said, I would say I don't put a lot of energy or a lot of weight into these different pieces of art and media that goes out. But I just think that capitalism and this military industrial complex, I think they playing with fire, because if they don't take anything else from Judas and the Black Messiah, you're going to take a little bit of anger away with you. And anger is a catalyst that it doesn't go away easily for some of us. Most people probably left the movie theater or their home or wherever they saw it, and they just went on about their business. But there's a handful of people who saw what happened in that movie, and it pissed them off. And I'm telling you, that anger is a seed that we can grow from. And so they could play around and think they can commodify the revolution, but it's the revolution coming for a reason.
Well, brother Ben, it's coming, because there's a movie in the works about Marcus Garvey.
I see. I heard.
And what I will say, there's a woman coming on the show. She was a historical advisor for the Nat Turner movie, Birth of a Nation. That not a lot of people saw because the director got caught up in a brouhaha that was kind of whatever. It destroyed. That's why it looked like that. Yeah. Destroyed that film, which I thought was a very good film, and also tackled something we never talk about, which is Nat Turner and slave revolts. And
they killed that one just
that movie got killed. And then, again, we talk about some of these movies by people like Robert Townsend, who, when we talk about Black directors, we never talk about Robert Townsend. I mean, didn't he direct Raw? Maybe the greatest stand-up comedy movie of all time.
Absolutely.
Hollywood Shuffle, in my opinion, still stands the test of time when it talks about busting out stereotypes. So to make a movie about A. Philip Randolph and organizing workers and not playing down the fact that A. Philip Randolph was a socialist, like, you're not playing that down in the movie. Malcolm X's real political affiliation in the film, you don't really understand. You don't really know. He doesn't really have an ideology.
You never learn in the movie Malcolm X that Malcolm X died fighting capitalism. You never hear that.
No. Look, somebody put Meteor Man in the chat room.
He did do Meteor Man in the Parenthood.
Why y'all do that, man, like that? He
really makes mistakes.
He actually made a movie, I forget the name of it, about a group of Black lawyers that got tired of seeing poor Black people kind of fucking their shit up, if you will. So they went on a vigilante killing spree, almost like Batman. And it's like a morality tale, because they're dealing with like, what are we doing? How are we making anything better in doing this? This is just silly shit.
I would tell you one kind of media that I'm so excited to see one day. And it's going to have to start on the internet, because there's no way any of these guys, I'm so goddamn tired of all these cop shows, cops being the good. Like, can somebody do a show where people in the streets win and some cops get their head, returned in kind? Like, I want to see some shows where the politicians, I want to see a Dexter for politicians, right?
Joker.
Joker, I kind of felt Joker, to be honest with you. They actually kind of, touched a little bit of my soul with that movie. Did you like
Joker? Did you guys? Has everybody here seen Joker?
I liked it more because, like, originally when it was like, oh hey, this is gonna be angry white dudes.
Yep.
I was like, yeah, this movie ain't gonna be it. When it was like, oh, this motherfucker pissed because capitalism, right?
Yes.
I mean,
this is the guy made the movie. Did you ever hear his interview where he talks about how he got the inspiration to do it? He was at a premiere for a movie nobody cared about. That was his movie. The director, everybody was shitting on it. He still has some power. He makes a phone call. He looked up and saw a poster for one of the superhero movies, and he was like, the only way I'm going to tell the story I want to tell is if I make a superhero movie.
Yeah.
So he had called up and I think he had a contract with, is it Warner or Fox? I forget who owns. I think Warner owns all the DC properties. And he was like, I want to do a superhero movie about neoliberalism.
I mean, it's a great anti-austerity movie.
They skipped Eat the Rich and had on the newspaper Kill the Rich.
Right.
That's what I was sold. But I mean, there were so many analyses of it. I didn't know how you guys felt. There's a lot of analysis of it that kind of dismissed it because it was contextualized for white grievance.
Yes.
And I'm like,
specifically white.
I
male
agree
grievance.
with this particular white grievance.
Right.
This is the one. This is the only one that I actually fuck with. So,
right.
Somebody was talking about Shea shirts.
She.
Oh,
I wore one of those to. Damn it! I shouldn't have shared this because then I could have told y'all without my audience hearing what I was getting ready to say. God damn it! But many years ago,
you went to
before I
Freak
got
Nick?
married. No, I popped up into a strip club with
Magic City.
Of ours.
This
This is long before I got married, though. It was long before I got married.
You went to Magic City.
And
It's totally
man,
fine.
it's like, bro, the sisters, when they saw it, and they were like, Che, and I was like, yeah. Hey man, that brother got like it was a capitalistic shirt. I get it. I bought it. I don't know where I bought it from, but man, that was a little movement just because I wore that shirt. I didn't realize he was so popular amongst the strippers. But there you have it.
Ben's like, this is why he fought and died for me right here, right now.
In this moment right now.
This is what he fought for.
The revolution.
Why don't you liberate some of them ones?
Oh no, we did. We liberated.
Speaking of strippers,
I'm a socialist, man. Everybody get a little bit of change here.
That we moved on to strippers. Not that they are strippers. Does anyone want to eventually discuss the controversy over the Grammys and Megan Thee Stallion and Cardi B and the WAP music that people like Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens are saying is causing the fall of civilization and blah blah blah.
It's the same thing we've heard for years when it comes to these award shows. I will take it all the way back to 84.
Oh man,
Eddie Murphy hosting the MTV Awards and Madonna. I
remember that, boy. You got a good memory.
Because I never did drugs.
Bullshit.
And I can't remember shit.
I'm boring as shit, man. I'm hella boring.
But I remember that I specifically remember them losing their mind over Madonna.
Yeah, Madonna was simulating masturbating, and it was a huge to-do because she was simulating masturbating on the stage, and she was a trash artist. And when we think about Madonna now, this is music that's played in elevators and at dentist offices. We can think about Prince. The reason why you have stickers on records is because a man brought controversy home. A suburban white man brought controversy home, was so appalled by the content in a Prince record. Keep in mind, the record before that, he's naked on a unicorn. But anyway, I don't know what the fuck you thought you was going to get from controversy. But he brings controversy home, and he's shocked by it, complains, because as Marcus always says, when you complain to a congressman, some of these cats listen. PMRC comes along. They want to put stickers on all these rock records. Remember early on, it was rock records, bands like Twisted Sister that said, we're not going to take it, which they thought was enough to ban free speech. And by the time 2 Live Crew comes along with, hey, we want some PUSS.
Jason, your pop culture mental Rolodex is impressive.
Right.
I'm sitting back like, wow, I don't remember any of these things, but yeah, I had smoked too much weed. Go ahead, brother. I don't. I remember where I was,
That's
when those
lot.
songs were. But that's asking a lot. I can tell you I was in Daytona Beach for some of this, but that's Black College Reunion.
All I was thinking about was like, man, I remember that time that I had left my Ludacris CD in the downstairs stereo, and then my dad invited some people over from church and thought he might have actually thought he was playing a Kurt Franklin CD, but the Royal Highness is clean, your highness, thank you, king shit, Ludacris mother. Yeah, like that starts playing, and I came home and I saw my CD in half in the trash can with my dad just staring at me. just upset.
Did you record what he said? Can we listen to it now? Oh
man, that was actually him. Kirk Franklin was doing an impression of my dad that day.
Right.
Like, I will snap your neck if you ever disrespect this household.
You want to hear a Christian cuss, embarrass them in front of church folks.
Oh, yes.
They gonna cuss.
That is the time.
It's hilarious. I didn't honestly think anything of the WAP controversy other than this is all they got. Like, this is all.
And I think part of it is, Joe Biden. If there's one good thing about Joe Biden is that he does not wade into the culture war, which I think is a huge strength of any political figure. But they can't. I think they're having a hard time like coming at Biden in the same way as they don't really have anything to say to the stimulus bill. So it's like, all right, go back to the old playbook.
Right.
Yeah, the culture war is actually getting kind of boring, though. I mean, it's just really, cats are talking about Pepe Le Pew and cartoons and all this kind of. I mean, it's really, and the way it interfaces with cancel culture. I'm not a fan of canceling people at all, but I mean, I'm seeing folks on the right and on the left act like cancel culture is equivalent to, I don't know, like
murder,
the Third Reich with the Gestapo coming down. I'm like, listen, okay, I understand how this could be a problem, but to make it seem like this is like changing the paradigm of the ruling class and all, I'm like, come on, man, y'all are really, dudes spend too much time on Twitter. That's really what's happening. Too much time.
And I think Twitter. Also, I mean, this gets back, I think, to people. And I'm naming out my own generation on this, too much raised on movies and are now interpret everything through pop culture and have not been involved in a real political movement. And that's the only framework. And it's like, this is also the problem, I just feel like, of thinking that the movie route, I know no one here is saying that, or that kind of art route is going to get us anywhere. But I'm like, at this point, you have a generation that's been raised on movies and TV. And that's the only way they can really interpret certain frameworks. And now that is political, and they're substituting that.
That's what's
for
scary.
Politics.
That's
what's social media and social media and digital technology. And this is all within the framework of what everyone knows my term, the 50-year counter-revolution. Right? We have not really been invested in movement politics since the late 60s, early 70s, and the 50-year period since then has been a counter-revolutionary reaction to that period of time. So we're in an echo chamber where the elders of our community, right, people in their 50s and 60s, are totally divorced from radical progressive politics, right? I mean, my mentor, God rest his soul, Bruce Dixon, who was a member of the Chicago Black Panther Party, who passed away. Bruce was in his 70s, So now you got people who are, in their 50s, in the late 40s, who are parents and sometimes grandparents who are totally divorced from any understanding of movement politics, why a Labor Party is important. God forbid you talk to them about socialism or challenging capitalism. And that's in American society overall. Talk about within the context of Black communities, which because of obvious reasons tend to have elders who are somewhat younger because of, age constraints and diet and so on and so forth. So, think about that the guy who is the elder now, his greatest contribution to the liberation movement is what? Hip hop and the Beastie Boys?
That's a good point. And I think, it's the decline of our institutions. I mean, today, 10% of workers are in a union. At its peak in mid 1950s, it was 37%. So you're just way more likely to have someone that has a family member that is even in a union and even understands what that can mean.
Let me ask a quick age check. Are we like all millennial and Generation X?
I'm Generation X. I'm
X.
I'm the oldest schmigger in here.
Yes. Yeah, because we had a little kerfuffle on my show yesterday, a little argument with my co-hosts, because they're all like younger millennials. I'm Generation X, and I'm gonna explain to them literally, Pascal, this is literally what you're just talking about. They gunned down, they murdered the liberation, progressive, socialist movement that was building in this country. And there was like an entire era where there was like, I don't want to say nothing, because you had your revolutionaries who were back, you know, still trying to fight the fight, but you didn't have any, like when I grew up, there was not a nationwide movement that I could attach myself to or even hear about or learn from, because it was just like, it was just a different world. It was, we had to like birth this almost all over again. And this is not to criticize the last generation. They were literally being shot and killed. And so it just had to be birthed all over again. And so I was just trying to tell these young cats, I'm like, don't shit on Generation X, because Generation X, like we had to ravage, we had to sort through the ravages of what was left of after it was gunned down, and then kind of find it for ourselves. And then we found the internet, and then we started finding each other. And that made it a lot more possible for millennials to be a little bit more revolutionary at an earlier age. And then Generation Z, obviously, like they just out here, they ready to burn shit down, like out the gate. And I love it.
But can we admit though, Pascal and Ben, that what is that quote you say about hip hop, Pascal? If you think hip hop is the zenith of cultural achievement for Black people,
was your contribution to the Black liberation struggle. Yo, man, there are people who make that argument. I'm old enough to listen. There are academics and hip hop scholars who were writing in the 90s that hip hop is the revolution, and it is where we where we will transform society. I was like, really? Come on, for real?
Adolf Reed has a great story.
That was the discourse, man. There were people making that argument.
That's wild.
Yeah, Adolf Reed has a good story about in the 90s going to a DSA conference. It was like a DSA youth conference, and that was like the thing that was like, hip hop is the new revolutionary movement, or we'll bring it about. So yeah, that's real.
But you know what?
What has it done?
I was gonna say, you take a whole bunch of broke kids and you give them more money than they have ever seen, and it is just it. And you show them that the way, it's just like these goddamn algorithms that I fight against every damn day. Like if I want to eat good, I just do a video about Trump, right?
Yep.
And I felt morally justified in doing it at the end of the campaign, because I'm like, fuck that dude. We got to get rid of that fascist. And then he's gone. So I have literally no reason to do a goddamn video about Trump. But the algorithms are set up the same way this music industry was set up. Everything in capitalism set up is to reward shit that doesn't change anything.
It's like Touré says, Reaganism to a beat.
Exactly.
In many ways.
Exactly.
I mean, sit down and read the lyrics. I mean,
you know what? You know what's sad? Working in music and going to all those fucking music festivals. There was one. What's the hip hop one you young people love? It's called Rolling Loud.
Oh yeah, that shit was.
Okay, so there's a festival called Roll. They came to Oakland. I can't remember what year this was, like 2017 or something. And I'm there. And our office was set up actually right next to backstage, which happens every so often, but it is really funny because the people that work in production for music festivals are majority white people. So it's a bunch of white people next to the backstage of a hip hop festival of all the littles. This was the year all the littles were there and the mumble rap kids were there, and everybody sounded exactly the same. It was the same. Like I didn't know one artist from the other, and I was like, how can anyone be having a good time right now? And I'm an old man that hates everything, so I'm just
see, I got a problem because I enjoy it. Man, you put on a trap beat and somebody mumbling on top of that. I used to hate it. I swear to God, I used to hate it, and I'm like, this shit is garbage. But then one day that shit, just the right beat hit my soul, bro. I was just in the car like, I don't even know what he said today. So, and I understand. No, I mean, we're taking it out of, we're not talking about the revolution there, because there's nothing revolutionary about it. But just terms of like percolating in my black and white, just that beat just
that's. I mean, like I feel like I kind of feel it though. Is like I've almost replaced music like that, like actual individual songs with like a 3-hour long lo-fi trap.
Yeah,
where it's like I don't need to be hearing nothing other than like
it's the beat, bro. I need
the melody just going along, like riding on a bus, right? Just like, give me something going along,
right?
But I think that going back to even like something that's like actionable, or at least the generational gap in action, and even just going to do a little quick plug. Something that we do at Left Flank Vets is even just trying to convince people to just do one email or one phone call to their representative, and not something like that. That's this revolutionary thing, but we have been devoid from political action in any sort, into which most people respond to us. I didn't even know that I could do that. I didn't know that I could contact my representative, and not only that you can do that, but they have to respond to you. Part of the fucking job is that they have to respond to you, and that people were just blown the fuck away. And that's just like that's a small thing, a very tiny small thing that we need to just start training the mass amounts of people to get back into the habit of actually just speaking truth to power and growing that, right? And then
do you
what's
guys
the next
remember in Bill Clinton running in 92 how MTV started the Rock the Vote?
Yes.
To push the to push the Democratic candidate Bill Clinton, to make him relatable to the youth. So we always talk about Bill Clinton and playing the sax on Arsenio. That was one thing, but Bill Clinton was 24/7 on MTV when MTV was still a viable network where young people were getting quote unquote news. They actually had a news program throughout the day that talked about
Kurt Loder. Was that the thing?
Kurt Loder, Kurt Loder, another guy. I can't remember.
Man, it's so good to be around people my age group, man. I love these references. This is refreshing.
I was gonna say, I was
no disrespect to my younger friends there, but yo MTV raps. I was
gonna say I was 1 year old during that election, but I know of it. Literally, but.
Was that my first election? That wasn't my first election. His second term was
his second term. No, actually, I couldn't even cut it in his second term. That was 96. So my first election was 2000. All elections. Yeah.
But one of my first political memories is the Monica Lewinsky scandal. Like, just
what a hell of a way to have a memory, bro.
Right, vague memories of that. That might explain a lot of my trajectory afterwards. But
and why you hate Ken Starr
and internet activity.
I was going to say, Coach Will just mentioned vote or die. That was the second phase of that, right? Yeah. That was leading up to Barry Obama getting in there. Matter of fact, the first time I ever think I saw Barack Obama was when Diddy
2004.
It must have been. Yep. It was not the convention, because I saw, but before that speech, Diddy did an interview with them during his whole vote or die thing and introduced them. And I was like, okay, this ultra light skinned brother, let's see what he does.
So it's Diddy's fault. So you just put a face to.
Diddy was he was the first person I ever saw introduce him. Yeah.
The political capital that these guys possess.
And
we even saw it in this last election I don't know if you guys remember, just this last election cycle, NFL players were actually saying, hey, go out and vote. We got to vote. Got to go vote, guys. I'm like, when the fuck have you guys ever done commercials about voting?
The thing, though, that I want to fucking talk about, because with voting is one thing, but the LeBron James and NBA strike, or right on the cusp, right? And then Obama, out of all the bombs Obama dropped,
my nigga.
This.
That's why I don't fuck with LeBron. That's
why
I can't fuck with him like that.
Paul, you fuck with LeBron, huh?
Bro,
me? No.
No, I just gotta. Can we pause and
he's reflect? Not better than Jordan or Kobe. But anyway.
I just want to pause and reflect on what my brother Marcus, what you just did there. Of all the bombs Barack Obama dropped, that one is the most insidious of them all, man. Because when he said that's when I was really like, fuck this dude.
And that's what I said. I feel like
that in 2009.
Yeah, well,
no. There's a difference between.
There was
2009. I was like, when he put Timothy Geithner in, I was like, oh, this dude ain't gonna do nothing. Right? He wasn't gonna change. There was as soon as he picked Timothy Geithner, I said absolutely nothing's gonna change. Right? By the time he got out of office, I'm like, okay, just go away and do your thing and be a rich, black man in this neoliberal system. But when he actively came in and sabotaged that. That's when that's another level of fuck you to me.
The most valuable thing that Barack Obama presents to the ruling class is the capacity to neutralize radical politics under the guise of being the first black president. He's absolutely. I predicted to someone. I said I wouldn't be shocked if he becomes the first billionaire ex-president. It wouldn't shock me, bro.
Isn't he already?
You know who used to keep it one? I mean, like had the eagle eye on that. It was Bruce Dixon.
Oh,
Bruce,
yeah,
and at the Black Agenda Report, man, I used to read it. I'm trying to encourage people to go vote for Barack Obama, and Bruce Dixon was like putting out articles saying this.
Right.
People don't understand. Bruce Dixon trained Barack Obama as a community organizer in Chicago. He went to the Obama's wedding, and when Obama ran, he was like, "No, this Negro is public enemy number one."
Have you all seen? I think this is pretty famous, but I mean, Adolf had the ultimate prediction back in the 90s.
I use that quote in my piece. You know, Barack Obama, Wall Street's favorite Manchurian candidate. About he says basically in 1996, he says, you know, we have this Harvard trained lawyer arising now, coming out of the foundation world. The left has got to do better with, you know, repressive neoliberal politics and a patina.
He said, I suspect people of his ilk are going to be the wave of the future.
This is going to be the wave of black politics in the future.
95, actually.
Yeah.
But I think it was I don't know. I don't think you could play that same game again. Like I think they're going to have to evolve. They can't. The whole
I agree.
Black folks kind of got. He wore out his blackness and his welcome really quick.
Well, I think that. I mean, this is a very good conversation here, right? Is that I think that the Obama effect or the Obama psyop, as I like to call it, right? The reaction to it has a class element to it.
Absolutely.
And what do I mean by that? Black professional managerial class adjacent people are always going to have their allegiance to Obama because he vindicates and validates their class position. Yeah. He vindicates them in that all of the abuse that they take in the white professional world, they can say, I have my black president, haha. And he validates them in that he makes them feel like they are important to the system. So they will always have an allegiance to Obama as a symbol of what they aspire to. But what I do see is that amongst more working class adjacent black folk, that the love affair is over with Obama. It is done. It's like, you know, F that dude.
Like, what did he do for us? Like, literally, it became easier to recruit black people for the Republican Party because of Donald Trump, because of Barack Obama.
Right.
Well, the thing is, though, I mean, you know, Ben makes a very, very, very important point here: is that the failure of the Obama presidency to bring forth material, tangible policy that improves the condition, not improves the condition of Black Americans, but a 50% loss in wealth, a complete, you know, erasure of economic condition under his presidency causes a segment of the black constituency to say F the Democratic Party whole cloth. Whole cloth completely, right? Particularly when the next candidate in 2016 is Hillary Clinton, and she is assigned to be, you know, the mother of mass incarceration vis-a-vis, you know, lock them up and all of the commentary she made during the crime bill. And one of the things that I think that black loyalists to the Democratic Party fail to realize, and I've said this before, is that mass incarceration resonates with younger black people in a different way than it resonates with older black people. Because if you look at the statistics, and this is a fact, 1 in 9 millennials has a parent that was incarcerated because of mass incarceration under the Clinton crime bill. So what we have to understand, right, is that if you're dealing with black people who are 55 plus, they were, if they're still voting and they have jobs, they were fully adults in the crack cocaine era. And if they didn't get caught in the system, you know, there might be some of those middle-class folk who were like, we needed that because crack was ravaging the community. Well, now you have a group of people who are under 35, under 40, who have parents who got caught up in that system. and they look at mass incarceration as the only thing next to slavery that's as bad for Black folk in this country. And anyone who had their fingerprints on that is persona non grata. And so what we saw in 2020 is that this massive rift in the Black electorate around, like, you know, percentages of people say, I'll vote for Trump before I vote for Joe Biden. And people were talking about, they were trying to attach that to, a Black man want that piece of patriot. You know, I found those kind of articles rather offensive because they were unwilling to realize that large parts of the motivations as to why Black men did not want to support the mass incarceration ticket is because they were the ones who were more personally affected by mass incarceration and its consequences.
And for most Black people, I mean, it wasn't necessarily voting for Trump; it just wasn't voting. And I think for most working people in general, interestingly enough, I mean, there's been like a 30-40 year decline in working class voter participation. There was one uptick in that 40-year decline. That was actually Obama's first election, because I think that was an FDR moment. That was a moment that called for an FDR response, and people thought he would give it. But to the earlier point about, to Ben's earlier point about they got to evolve, and I think we saw, you know, they tried to do something similar with Kamala, but it didn't work. Right?
It didn't work because Kamala doesn't have the game.
No, yeah,
right.
Like,
they so dumb, bro. They putting out pictures of her walking through the. Nobody got time for that this time.
Listen, Jason will attest to this. You know, I have nothing but contempt for Obama. I hate the Bidens more, but I will always admit this: on terms of raw political skill and talent, the boy is a prodigy. Obama. Obama.
That's where
the ability, the skill, the emotional manipulation, public speaking, all. I mean, you know, they created the Negro in a petri dish where they did it right. You know, I mean,
Cory Booker can't do it.
This is why I question if the Black community is actually, or the community at large is actually done with Obama-esque, you know, type of thing, or they're just waiting for the next fucking rich salesman, right? Like they just because like that's like because we Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, and the Democratic Party they are comically terrible at politics. They are comically terrible at relating to people on just a human fucking level, right? That's why people actually buy in to lizard people. Why? Because you look at Hillary Clinton actually try and have a conversation with people, you're wondering, you're questioning humanity at this fucking point. So I think that if the Democratic Party happens to stumble on another smooth, silver-tongued motherfucker, it will leave itself to the same thing.
Let me tell you why I disagree with Marcus.
Hold on, let Paul jump in and then Pascal.
Well, I think it depends what other alternatives are there. So the thing is, like, when Obama ran, there was not a left alternative. But you saw now with Bernie, and I know for some reason everyone forgets this every minute, but among Black voters 35 and younger, Bernie was number one in 2020 and was second overall Black voters to Biden, and that was narrowing all the way up to Super Tuesday. But my point being is that when there's that other option on the table, you know, that changes the game. Now you actually have options, and of course, Bernie is Bernie. He has its limits as a person, a candidate. I think we can look forward to a future of other left candidates who are, you know, younger, and all that. So I think it all is the context of like what else is there as an option for people.
I just remember too that, like, yeah, you know, obviously having a left alternative, but like Hillary Clinton and her campaign like spit in the face of people in Michigan. There was like about 32 to 35,000 votes. Democrat whole ticket left the president blank. And so like the Hillary Clinton, they were ridiculously bad. And so I'm just nervous. I'm scared that there hasn't been there hasn't been a lesson learned large scale from Obama.
We'll see what happens with Raphael Warnock. Democracy Now! Played his entire speech.
I played his speech too. It was a good speech because, you know, one former preacher to a current preacher. I was like, okay, this is what you do when you send a preacher up there. Okay, cool. But hey, sorry, Raphael. Like, he ain't gonna be president.
There was no, yeah. I see. Look, man, I remember when my dad sat me down and he told me that he wanted to vote for, what's the light skinned brother's name? The general Colin Powell. Remember when Colin Powell wrote the book? Yeah. My daddy was like, man, son, this might be the first black president. And he was ready to get behind that shit.
He could have been the first black president.
He could have been, but what Colin Powell wasn't fucking with the people.
He took it. He was too committed to the military industrial complex when he went down there with that yellow. You know, he shot himself in the foot.
Well, he wasn't fucking with the people like that too. He was like, I'm not fucking with you people.
Yeah, Pascal, you were about to, because I wanted, you were about to say something about the possibility of another Obama. Did you? Because I was going to say something, but I wanted to hear what you were going to say.
My larger point about the possibility of another Obama is that, first of all, I think that one thing that we would all agree with on this show right now is that the identity politics framework is the only key the neoliberals of the Democratic Party have, right? So it's like the first black woman, the first gay, the first Latino, the first Asian, blah blah blah. So when we're questioning whether the Obama model will work, the larger question is that will that first XYZ demographic hustle pull it off for them, right? Okay, so understand that the question we have to ask is that is America still caught up in that first XYZ demographic zeitgeist? It didn't work well with Kamala Harris. I think, and I would like to hear what some of you, including Ben, would like to say. I think that the reaction to Kamala Harris, just like what I was talking about Obama, had a class element. If you went to an HBCU, or if you were in a black fraternity or sorority, or if you were adjacent to those class of people, you loved the Chucks and Pearls and all that other my first vice president is black. That represents less than 20% of Black America.
Right.
Yeah, a lot.
We ain't got enough. Before somebody answers, Paul, our lovely co-host from Jacobin's YouTube channel, also Jacobin contributor, has some prior engagements he's got to take off. Thank you so much for coming through, Paul. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was great. I'll be glad to come back on soon, but I wish I could trash talk the Obamas more, but gotta get off.
You gotta get out of here.
Right.
Don't worry, I'm committed to staying and trashing them for as long as you guys are on air. So.
Yeah. Peace, Paul.
All right. See you. Thanks, man.
Thanks, Paul.
Hey, Paul.
But yeah, so the question becomes, right, is that, can they replicate that kind of first demographic X in question in the neoliberal mold? And I think that Paul was saying something that's very important, is that one of the major difference is that we have a burgeoning left. I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily say we have a left, but we have a left created by, starting with Occupy and down to the Sanders phenomenon, that is occupying online media spaces that will do the work in investigating these candidates to let people know, like, hell no, this person is definitely not the one, right? Because let's make it clear, Buttigieg was the trial balloon of that first demographic.
They thought that shit was gonna work the second time.
Oh my god! Yes,
he was a trial balloon.
Yeah,
interesting.
And that's something that
some will argue that Andrew Yang is a bit of a trial balloon.
Yeah, I don't know that, dude.
And like that, I mean, I think you're hitting some with like really on, especially with Pete. And if you look at the history of this dude, which when he said military veteran, or at least when that was like when that was the first thing, right? I knew about this dude as a gay dude, Navy vet.
Yep.
Bro, let me tell you,
I began scratching my head, and like once you get just the first onion, once you get past that first layer, you're like, man, this motherfucker bullshit.
The funniest thing in the world is that this dude joined the military thinking that was going to be his pathway to the White House. Nah,
yes.
Sorry.
Yeah.
You did that shit. You put your, I don't think he was ever in any real danger probably, but still the fact remains, like, this nigga put his life on the line for a resume builder. And now it's literally the thing that we look at him like, okay, that's a red flag. Yeah. The fact that he
got a cabinet position.
Yeah, but man,
around and got a cabinet position.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think that's the height of. I think that's the extent to. Because here's the thing: If you ask who that smooth talking next Barack Obama is, we're on the internet. And the reason we're on the internet is because we were too fucking poor to actually matriculate up the ranks of the Democratic Party. They messed up and let too many black folks who actually got the skill set to do even better than Barack Obama. Because Obama, he's cool. He's all right. You know what I mean? He was good at the time because we hadn't seen anything like that. Yeah. But in terms of just communication skills and actual, all right, brother. But there's too many black folks who ain't got nothing. There's too many Americans who simply ain't got nothing. And they don't have enough petri dishes to recreate it and they don't have the time. Because like you said, there's a burgeoning left, and the left has some power. Like and by the time they try this again in 4 more years or 3 more years, like there's going to be even more power behind what we're trying to do. And I think they got a real problem on their hands because the black folks in this country, we ain't playing this game. Like we did them a solid and we helped them get rid of Donald Trump. But most of us are pissed off that we even had to go and make that kind of decision. And we're pissed off with the entire system. I don't even think, and I know you guys are probably long before this, so this ain't even going to be a shocker to you, but we ain't going to do it through electoral politics. We're not going to do it through this whole system in the first place. The shit that got to be done is going to have to come from the outside and just like stare this system down face to face, whether it be rhetorically, whether it be economically, whether it be in the streets, because the system is just too rigged to maintain itself. And there's no way we're going to be able to beat it from the inside.
Well, one of the problems, and Jason knows, I said this, how many times have I said this on the show, is that black politics is a politics of containment. It's a politics of containment. And what I mean by that is a politics of containment is that you have a political class, what we call it black and general point, the black misleadership class, which really represents the interest of capital and the ruling class in blackface that is pimping out racial unity, i.e., Chucks and Pearls, i.e., was like, oh, I went to FAMU, y'all, come on, or leveraging the civil rights movement, like the mayor of Atlanta talking about, like, y'all don't know nothing about protest. This shouldn't have to be done to scream at, black people in the streets who are protesting, police brutality, who will leverage their racial bona fides to police black people at the behest of the state and capital.
That's a fact.
And because of the charade of racial unity, they are supported. That charade is failing, but it's a class project because the university pedigreed, fraternity, sorority, links, and all of that other cadre are wedded to that politics. So, and I've said this before, and I think I've said this on other podcasts, and I think I said this to Jason. What happens when the fulcrum of black politics exists in a space to the right of white progressives?
And that's the thing.
Break that. Help. I feel that.
What I mean is that the black electoral political machine coalesces around centrist,
is that
neoliberal, corporate Democrat. It's been happening since 2016. But now, since the rise of Sanders, we have a whole coterie of white progressives whose politics are to the left. And I've said this before. I've said this to academics. I argue that it is unprecedented in the post-civil rights era, if ever, that black politics occupies a space within the Democratic Party to the right of a left flank of white progressives. Because traditionally, black politics was always considered to be the most left or radical politics, even up until Jesse Jackson. Now, you're finding that black politics occupies the more conservative neoliberal space.
Clyburn, Jeffries.
But here's the thing I think about this, and I want to give you guys opinion.
On the electoral level, and I'm not talking about movement, on the electoral level.
Oh, yeah, no. Yeah. You 100% spot on. The thing is, those motherfuckers are old. James Clyburn ain't gonna be here too much longer.
Hakeem Jeffries, though, he ain't.
Yeah, but there's not enough. There's just not enough. There's not. He ain't got the skills, brother.
Hakeem Jeffries, I think he falls into what you were talking about before of like they trying to pull black folks without any skills.
Yeah, like cause they didn't know where to go find us.
Yeah.
We were poor. We ain't had shit. But all we had was the fire of the fact that we were poor. Like government, like real talk, growing up on hand-me-downs and government cheese and lights getting cut off on a regular basis. And if you lucky, you got a place to stay. That shit changes you. Like that don't go nowhere, man.
That
And
radicalizes you.
Bro, that don't
several ways.
But the thing is like I don't think that there are enough black people doing good enough in this country for that to be sustainable, because the most of us, we are naturally on the furthest left, and we have to ask ourselves on a regular basis, like, how do I do this without getting myself killed? Like every morning when I wake up, I'm like, how do I do this work that I actually want to do without getting myself killed or set up by the feds? Because this is the life that we live. Like, honestly, like, I tell people all the time, don't let none of this shit fool you. Like we had scraped up pennies to get this shit looking the way it looks and doing what we do, because we just never had those resources. And I think that story replicates itself out in the black community, like tremendously more than Hakeem Jeffries. And so once that cabal of people, like I love the way you framed it, because I think first time I ever heard that was from Adolph Reed. It was a politics of containment. Yeah, but them niggas about to die out, right? And I don't think that they have a bench that is qualified enough to go up against people like the 4 people on the screen. I just don't think they got it.
Yeah. And I mean, this is like, I mean, we're something that
but the thing is,
goes into my passions, though. Is
that this is a class project, man.
Yeah. But the politics, though, of it all, this, I mean, like when Ben says this is got to come from something from outside of electoral politics, is they're saying, like, you look at the Nevada Democratic Party and what happened with them.
That was a big move.
Big move. I think we need to see what happens with it, because the establishment went full scorched earth, and they would rather see the Nevada political just scene fall to Republicans than it actually fall to leftists. Or at least give leftists.
But let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, because we all are waiting to see what happens with Nevada, and that we still, I can't find any more press about that proposed legislation to let tech companies set up pretty much their own sovereign nations within the state. I saw that the governor had
because it wasn't necessarily a legislation. It was a proposal out of the governor's office, which I don't necessarily know too much about the state politics there, but it wasn't official legislation that was getting actually put in to like the legislature and all those things. You know, it was this governor, he'd floated this fucking idea. It created some buzz. His office then generated this larger, proposal, if you will, but it's largely just creating, Mad Max Fury Road bullshit.
It really was.
Yeah.
And what scares me about that is a lot of progressive people tend to be closer to tech than they think they are, because to Ben's point about where are the revolutionary voices, a lot of those people come from tech, because that's where you're going to make the money, where you're going to change the world. People get into politics because you want to change the world, right? I mean, good faith. Let's just be, good. Yeah. So a lot of that mentality goes into the McKinsey world, the tech sector. I'm going to go do this thing. I'm going to go create this app, and only then I'm going to Andrew Yang it and save the world and show them that UBI is the way and stop the robots from taking over. So it's going to be interesting to see how that is proposed.
You know what my reaction was to the DSA takeover of the Nevada electoral constituency? I can't wait to see these folks bang up against the black political class throughout the country and see that shake out, because it's already happening. If you don't remember, right before the November election, there was a big kind of brouhaha between how members of the Sanders faction and the DSA types were challenging Biden to not hire lobbyists in his administration. And you had fixtures in the black political class who were literally arguing as to why Biden should hire corporate lobbyists in his administration because it was good for diversity. And also remember Hakeem Jeffries who was thumping his chest talking about how we ain't going out without a fight. He was talking all this mess during the 2018 primaries of 2020. And then you had Cori Bush take out the Clay family in St. Louis, and then all of a sudden he had to walk away with his tail between his legs. So let's make this clear, right? The black political class, particularly the Congressional Black Caucus, is seeing these new, we want to call them progressive DSA people, have you with. My politics is to the left of them, but still, they're seeing these people as a threat. And it's going to be, I want to tell you, to answer Ben's question as to what I see happening, I see someone, a hybrid, someone who is going to come in under the DSA left kind of banner, but actually be a sleeper cell neoliberal that rises up that they're going to allow to play the game.
If I float the name Mondaire Jones out there,
I'm not feeling that cat because he kind of was one of those people that was part of that bill.
Mondaire Jones is a freshman congressman, I believe, out of New Jersey. New York. Yeah.
Took out Elliot Engel, right? He's the one that took out Elliot Engel.
No, that was Jamal Bowman took out Engel. Yeah. But Mondaire, he did, but that's the thing is that I feel that Mondaire Jones is that cat. He could
He got the swag, bro. He ain't got that sauce to carry at that level.
And that's something that true, but also too, I think that at the end of the day, even the Obama, just the campaign was built different than what Hillary did and what Biden did.
That's true.
The Obama campaign just basically did good politics. They did, all counties, 50 state strategy, just good fucking politics. Like there are movements going back. Hell, you can talk about dudes in Maine getting the clean and clean air, clean water act, and the things that they get going across the country, having to sell it. Similar to the ways that freaking motherfuckers went across with the Federalist Papers selling the Constitution. There's just basic things that are good politics that the Obama campaign did that no one else really took advantage of, which is dumb. That other people could very well do, and that's where I don't think you necessarily need a super 10 out of 10 smooth as fucking silk motherfucker, where just basic good tenets of organizing and politics can move people into that realm.
But to get past Pascal, to get past this podcast, to get past us, Obama did not have the barrier to entry that everybody got right now. Nigga, motherfuckers think people think I'm a sellout. People to the left of me think that I'm an op and I'm a Fed, right? And I'm cool with them thinking that. I know who I am, but I just love the fact that ain't nobody coming up in this space without taking you're gonna get vetted like a motherfucker at every single level. So the part of Obama's ascendancy was the lack of the progressive infrastructure that we have right now. And while it's not a lot, but it is something.
But the thing is, this is the thing. Let's call a spade, Ben. The progressive infrastructure is mostly white, and that progressive infrastructure has no bona fides in Jim Clyburn, South Carolina.
We got a lot to fix. We're not where we need to be, because the way we got mollywopped in South Carolina. I cover South Carolina. I was there the weekend, and man, it just took 10 conversations, and I was like, oh shit, no, we about to get blown out. It's just like the passion with which people were not fucking with Bernie Sanders in South Carolina was it was virulent. It was anger. I'm like, holy shit, we gonna get blowed the hell out. And
I made the comment. Jason saw it. I put it on my Facebook page. There will be no left politics in America without black people.
Facts.
Because if black people are not a part of left politics, black politics will destroy left politics. in this country.
Damn right.
Because didn't black politics stop in 2016 and 2020?
Like a
did it.
motherfucker.
Like
And they didn't want to listen.
motherfucker.
And they did not want to listen. I try to tell them, clear Americans.
I mean, listen. The goal. Our goal here is not to say, "Oh, black people caused Bernie Sanders to leave," because it's not black people. Because if you look at the way black people are polled, they are more progressive than even the Democratic Party in terms of the issues. And in South Carolina, most of them actually liked Medicare for all. Quite frankly,
they just
the problem is, and very few people will admit this, the social infrastructure of black politics is governed by institutions that are wedded to the corporate center of the Democratic Party in exchange for patronage, meaning your black churches, your black membership organizations, your fraternities, sororities, the links, the people, when you go to your church, when you go to PTA, these are the people that control the ideological infrastructure of politics in the quote unquote black community.
Talk, brother.
Okay. And these people, your black media, you don't think people who have, I'm not going to name names, who have certain shows or YouTube shows who cape for Democrats are looking for agreements to have XYZ representative, remove them, contract for advertisement.
I'm going on the show Tuesday, man. Come on.
Listen, people know how the game is played, but no one wants to call it out. No one wants to talk about why is it that certain black media personality who's no longer on News One is caping for Hillary Clinton? What kind of actual contracts does he have with the Democratic Party in terms of representation, in terms of actual advertisement, in terms of being able to platform elected officials?
But you know who else is platforming? A fucking socialist who would literally have picked up guns this past summer if I had enough people who actually was going to fuck with me on that level. But that's when I knew these white Americans weren't. These folks who make money on the revolutionary industrial complex, Patreon and stuff, they weren't about that life. They weren't. And so I think maybe the opportunity presents itself. Maybe we can edit this part out, but no, I know we live. I think the Manchurian candidate is going to come from a different direction, and they ain't even going to be a candidate. I think we have an opportunity because you said it, man. We are to the left of everything in this country because why the hell would we not be, right? It's literally a requirement for our survival for us to understand the nature of the police state, which is a byproduct of the military industrial complex, which is there to protect capitalism. Like we will figure that shit out simply because the police hit us across the head or killed one of our cousins. You know what I mean? And so I think there are infrastructures that are in place that are facilitating the current power structure exactly the way you diagnosed it. And there's no question about that. But man, like programs like it's just, there's a level of blackness in our blood and revolutionary spirit in our blood that even the links, they either have to get with the program or get left the fuck out of the program, right? There's people who look, my wife is an AKA. The owner, she did stop me from going to march on a one-man march up the Capitol steps, burning the American flag. So she did stop that revolutionary movement to save my life. But at the same time, everything else, they're down for the cause. Like I got family members who then we ain't never had enough money to be a part of the Boule, never ever. But like we all graduated from HBCUs, and we all they AKAs and in the sororities and stuff. But dog, the revolutionary spirit is in them. What has not been present has been enough figures, because it can't be centralized around one person ever again, ever again, or even 5 people. The leadership has to be decentralized and democratized. And as more and more of our voices come foment to the top, people are starting to remember, goddamn right, I am a revolutionary. And I honestly believe we're gonna find more people who would identify with the revolution because it's by nature, it's in our blood.
Ben.
And I could just be overly optimistic.
Ben, listen, man. I've been a member of a black fraternity the oldest black fraternity for over 35 years. I know these shuck and buck Negroes. They ain't worth a damn.
But you know what? But here's the other thing, though. You know what? Check out the next generation that's coming up behind them, right? And don't get me wrong, if we don't catch them soon enough, they will just replicate what they are getting from this system.
First of all, the reason why the generation coming behind them is more angry because they ain't getting no jobs. That's the reason why.
And this is the opportunity because they fucked around and left the rest of us out to dry. There was not enough wealth.
But
no, the way America plays this game, there was not enough wealth for all of us black folks to come up.
What I'm saying, though, even though, and I'm going to take your word, your wife may be radical, the president of her grand chapter, all she's talking about is chucks and pearls and support Kamala. I guarantee you.
Yeah,
all she's talking about. All she's talking about.
I gotta be quiet at this point. You ain't gonna get me in trouble with my wife. Not on this.
I mean, that's. I feel like
let that nigga have my name in his mouth again.
Are we splitting the generational thing in just a different mode? You know, when you're speaking of Pascal, when you're talking about the black fraternity people that you know versus maybe the people that are coming after in this time frame, right? If you look at Bernie's campaign, like that's the breakdown. Yeah. Young black people here, this is a good, older black question. People there,
and I'll respond with a personal anecdote, right?
Uh-oh.
A brother who pledged me when I was in college. Good brother.
You came up the hard way back then, brother.
Yeah, I came up in the 80s. Yeah, good brother.
My God, I respect.
Loves Obama, loves whatever, so on and so forth. He has two sons who are also a fraternity, big time Bernie Sanders supporters. Both of them saying that they're socialists, challenging capitalism, big time. They love our content. That this is revolution. All of them in the same family. Different generations, and the politics are very, very different. His sons, they like when I challenge the black political class. For his father's generation, his father's a little older than me, that's like clutch to pearls, because for them, they look at the traditional black political class as what they aspire to. Is like, oh, we've got our black representatives, and they like that they have black mayors in their chapters, so on and so forth. And yet his sons are complicating that whole alleged black excellence narrative.
I love it.
So I will give you credit that amongst the younger generation of black folk who haven't gotten the fat back and biscuits from the Democratic Party that their older generations have got, they are more willing to challenge the paradigm. However, in terms of the political infrastructure of these communities, when Jim Clyburn has the South Carolina primary and he has the phone number of every grad chapter president for the Alphas, the AKs, the Kappas, the Qs, and the Sigmas, and the Deltas in his Rolodex, he ain't talking to that 22-year-old kid who has a Bernie t-shirt on, who likes to, read, Marx's 18th Bremier. No, he's talking, when he's calling the presidents of the HBCUs, he's talking about to a cat who was like, I'm with you, Clyburn. Just make sure you get that federal set-aside money for me in the next, congressional hearing so we can build that gymnasium.
Yeah. To that point, though, the beautiful thing about it is we die and leadership is replaced. Even in these, the fraternities and stuff, just as an example. And I'm just thinking about, it's going to take a minute and it ain't going to happen soon, because you're absolutely right. As you diagnose what's happening around us right now, we can't argue with you. I do believe that there's a big enough chip on all of our shoulders who grew up the hard way, man, for us to actually start replacing some of these people on the outside. The inside has mastered the art of protecting themselves. And I think we got an opportunity, man. Here, I'll give you an example. My wife and I, we started this company that we're trying, we fighting for our lives, but we're trying to build this black media company. And our motto is liberation is excellence. Black liberation is black excellence. And we want to change it, flip that shit on its paradigm. Like the very best of the Black community were our revolutionaries, right? The very excellence that people think that they love and aspire to, it was the revolutionary blood that's running through our veins. Now, is that aspirational? Is it hopeful? Could it fail? If we don't get these clicks up, it might. But the fact is, I think somebody's going to succeed on that front. And I think it's going to be a whole lot of somebodies who can actually change that paradigm, where the expectation is going to be, where do you stand on these issues? Not where do you stand on how much money you got? Because nigga, we ain't got money. Yeah. Most of us ain't got it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, people don't understand, like, this show is held together with
tape and duct tape.
Oh my God. I literally have to re-duct tape my sun thing on my car because it won't stay up and I can't cut it. So, and I'm hiding out because I'm trying not to get that shit repoed. But that's just, I'm being
brother.
Real.
Well, let me tell you something, right? Let's make this clear. You're not going to hear this conversation on Roland Martin on CNN or Joyanne Reid.
Hell no.
You're not going to hear Angela Rye talking about internal class stratification and how it affects Black politics. Ben, I don't know if you watched the episode we did, but
this is why it's so hard for me to actually succeed out here. Like, I'm good.
I said, listen, do you watch the episode we had with Preston Smith on class stratification amongst Black people and how it affected housing in Chicago during Jim Crow? Preston Smith, who was a political scientist, was dropping bombs. And he basically was saying, and I agree with him, that the whole paradigm of traditional Black politics and Black leadership needs to die, needs to be collapsed, and completely this whole kind of like, and he, in his book and himself, challenges the concept of unitary Black political interests. And that's why I challenge concepts of, the revolutionary nature is in our blood, because I vividly remember being in social settings amongst university trained Black people who would say things like, I don't like unions, say unions are a problem. Okay. I hear, or saying it was like, oh, I love charter schools. Oh, really? Do you know how many Black teachers are being eviscerated? Negroes. Yeah. Come on, Ben. Yeah. I know you know these fat back and biscuits Negroes. You know how much they love these charter schools.
They don't particularly like me. I know them well. Shit, I like it. It's like the thing is like, man, I have this weird existence. Like, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Not only do these people support neoliberal candidates, they support neoliberal politics.
Yeah. But they ain't got enough of them. They're in positions of power that hold and maintain the Democratic Party as this neoliberal institution that it is. And they have that kind of control, and they have enough money to do that. But we got the numbers. And it is very
Black people, the Black poor and working class have always had the numbers, Ben.
Yeah, but we never had the organizing capacity that we have. The technology is affording us right now. What we're doing right now is literally, it's one conversation. We had about 100 people, but this is literally.
And I want to ask this question. Marcus's co-host put this question up. He said, "Can revolutionary excellence be built through electoral politics?"
Not the way America set up.
Not alone.
Yeah, no,
not alone.
It took me way too long to come to grips with that. I'm last to the party on that. But
I'll say this much, and people give me shit about this. I'm cool with Shahid Buttar. I don't know if you ever had Shahid on any of your shows, Ben. Yeah. He's actually a personal friend.
Okay.
And to see what happened to him from the progressive side of politics, let's not get it twisted. It wasn't Nancy Pelosi operatives. It wasn't GOP operatives. It was the DSA and SF that was like,
Yeah, man, well, and this is so. And Jason, we've gone back and forth about Shahid.
I heard that in
the politics, like overall, and like Ben, I feel that too. Is like as far as like I've had to really like look myself in the mirror and say, "Listen, man, you are just passionate about fucking politics, but this is not the end all be all. So recognize what you're passionate about. Do what I want. I'm doing what I want to do to make myself happy and contribute my sliver, right? But I often tell people, do not attempt to dive into politics as much as I do, right? We actually need people to do the important shit. But at that same time, yeah, I mean, like, how do we?
There's people out there right now doing important shit. I'll tell you this
Yeah.
right now. I told you, and Ben, I don't know you from Adam. I finally got out of there. I lived in a warehouse across the street from one of the largest homeless encampments in the city of Oakland. And I don't say across the street like it's down the way, like, nigga, it was across the street, and I wasn't supposed to live in the warehouse in the first place. It wasn't for residential living.
Right.
And some of the outreach work that I saw there on a daily basis from regular ass people that just wanted to change the conditions of the area would constantly blow my mind and give me hope, because it never came from a certain class of people. It was never like middle class people. It was always like someone that had just came from the bottom that cleaned themselves up a little bit. That was like, all right, I got some money. We're going to do get people some food. Them fighting to get even a porta potty in there was hard. Jesus. This is over 200 people living on the street. So much it's in the middle of the street now.
Damn.
So if you've seen the movie Sorry to Bother You by Boots Riley,
yeah,
he actually filmed a lot of that in the place where I stayed. So the scene where the dude is driving down the street, that is our street in West Oakland, and trying to amplify those voices.
Yeah.
Right? Trying to help these cats build these coalitions bigger. Because again, there is some people on the ground doing good shit. Kashama Sawant trying to do good shit.
Man, she came on the show Wednesday. Oh my God. That sister,
she's fiery.
Amazing.
She's
amazing.
fiery. They gives no fucks.
We were told we can get a representative from her office. So Ben, I'm happy that you were able to get her on.
We sent an email to one of
West
her
Lake also.
But no, listen. This is what I'm gonna say. Here's the other thing. This is what you all are doing, and what I do in my own way. I know a lot of people like, oh, Ben is all right, whatever.
Man,
what we're doing,
shills, right?
Yeah. What we are all doing is literally the pathway forward. Here's what has to change in what we're all doing. I've been talking to a whole lot of people behind the scene, which is probably why I got no voice left. We have to stop engaging in this media space with the scarcity mindset with regards to our audiences.
Thank you.
People hoard their audiences.
Thank you.
And we just ain't got enough motherfucking money on our side to win independently of each other. So I'm literally committing to you guys. I this is my actual first time. Forgive me. I don't watch TV. I don't listen to podcasts. I just do this work. But I'm more than happy. One, I want to get all of y'all on the show, just come through as often as I can get you to come through. But we got to share audiences. I want to introduce y'all to my entire audience to you all, and just kind of just reciprocate that over and over and over and over and over again, because we are literally not going to make it without each other. And
I want to say this though,
we're dead on arrival.
I should have probably done this before, but you're actually you already do this, or I know that your mods on Twitch are at least doing what you're asking them to do, because your Twitch channel is rated our Twitch channel. And so when you talk about sharing audience like that with their Twitch rate, that's literally all that it is sharing an audience with another. And that's something that we always try and do. We always try and do the cascade. We try and raid down to different communities, and I see one dude, Lost Sue, who's an indigenous dude that he just talks about what indigenous people go through and the different tribes and all those things, but it's like sharing that audience and making sure that we don't, like you said, there ain't nothing to hoard neither, right? There's about 10 Bitcoins between all of us on the left. Trying to hoard shit doesn't make any damn sense.
Let's talk about the half a Bitcoin of black voices on the left.
And I think but that's kind of where
that's I don't know. You might be overestimating it there, but you're right. I feel what y'all saying.
So this is what I was trying to do, and I was talking about this with a few people. I talked about it with some of the Jacobin guys, and I talked about it with Matt Leck. I wanted to make a guide, like a TV guide, so people know when these live streams are. I mean, ultimately, we're on YouTube. You can go back and watch it, but when you know what to look for, like here's a left YouTube TV guide.
That's brilliant. And let me tell you something. We also got to start scheduling ourselves to not be on when each other's on. I really want to be shout out to a lot of people. Why are you streaming at the same exact time, like here's 5,000 people over here, 5,000 people over there. Could y'all not stream at the same time so that y'all could at least get 7,500 at each of those streams? And I also want to ask a question: how is the Black Agenda Report doing, man? Because honestly, if there's a publication that has been accurate, goddamn it, every single time, even when it used to make me mad, back when I was a big Obama supporter back in 2008, I used to get mad listening to the Black Agenda Report come across the radio. But I kept listening and I kept reading. And
Black Agenda Report still is going strong, but I mean, you know, folks are getting old, man. You know, Bruce Dixon passes away, God rest his soul, and Glenn is kind of sick. You know, Glenn is dealing with his challenges, but we have Mark, we have, you know, good editorial staff, and it'll be around. You know, it's still just doing well, but you know, that generation is getting up there in age, and you know, they still need to be replaced, and that's something that's a reality we have to deal with. But you know, they still put on the work.
Literally anything. I mean, my platform ain't that big, but it can send links, it can send traffic. So anything I could do to amplify, because we just ain't gonna make it without each other, man. And the revolution is dead on arrival if we are competing for audiences.
Yes.
That was one thing I wanted to ask you, Ben. I did want to ask you if we can get it worked out, if you could get Preston Smith on your show. I mean, he did well on our show, and then Zero Books re-aired our episode with him, which is also doing well.
I would love to, and actually I'll send an email, and I'm sure we can get Sharma Shawant, like I don't see why not. I mean, the fight that she's in, she needs every single platform possible to be amplifying her, because when you talk about somebody who's like been blacklisted, you know, we should be hearing that. We should be hearing that sister every goddamn day.
Because ultimately what I would love to see happen is if every so often we could get together and do like one big thing, right? Where it's like, okay, we're gonna all stream together with one big show, one big panel or something like that. Like, all right, Ben Dixon and This Is Revolution.
Well, I mean, listen, man, I think,
go ahead.
You know, I mean, I think Jason and I, when we first started, when we kind of came together, one of the mantra that we have, right? And Jason, correct me if you think I'm not framing it right, is to bring Black people back to their left political tradition.
That's my whole reason.
Yeah. You know, that one of the things that angered me the most about the Sanders phenomenon, I'm still pissed about this, was that we had Black people in mainstream media trying to make left politics seem like it's a white thing.
They did a good job of that.
Man, you know,
off.
I'm upset. I'm mad right now because I agree with you 100%. And that something was like, they're
masters of that.
Ben will co-sign this, and I think Ben is intellectually honest enough to do that.
It's coming. I know it's coming.
There are sadly enough Black voices, blacker than thou voices, who love to echo those talking points.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but give me an example so I can actually give you my intellectual.
Your Black socialists are nothing but, you know, y'all are just, you know, on, you know.
That was Joyanne Reed's whole goal. That was her mode. Like, she brought on a body language quote unquote expert to talk about how Bernie Sanders was misogynist,
was too Jewy.
Here's the beautiful thing about it. You're absolutely right. But y'all, that generation of people who actually watch MSNBC, like, God bless. I love my mama. I love my aunties and them. I really hope that they be here. I would love for my mama to be here through eternity with me. Ain't nobody under 40 gonna be watching MSNBC in about 10 years. They're gonna be going to because they're at the internet right now getting their media.
Yeah.
Millennials, they ain't gonna be good. They ain't gonna cut on CNN for shit. And so, like, it's literally our ability to collectively build a sufficient enough audience so that we can actually live and not all go bankrupt trying to do this shit. Because I'm gonna be honest with you, man, before I busted Michael Bloomberg, nigga, my lights were cut off. Okay, that's why my wife revolutionary, because she fucked with me when our lights were off. All right. Yeah. And so, like, we are doing these things because it's we believe it. I don't do this show I do because I like politics. I fucking hate politics. I want to play poker, smoke weed, and like, and
That
just
champagne socialism. Yes.
like no, I just want to have peace. Like when I finally when I did that thing with Michael Bloomberg, and I finally was making enough money to just like not have chest pains over the fact that I don't know how I'm gonna pay rent. You know what I mean? There was a level of peace that I never had in my life, not in my childhood. And I'm like, there's just a baseline that people need in order to have a moment to breathe and catch their breath. I think we need to collectively create a sufficient support base for people who are doing this because it's our life, not because we're just good at it, not because we want to be, I don't want to be on TV. And I had to go lose weight. Like, I just want to sit around and eat wings and get fat and be on the radio, maybe. But like, I'm like, it's just was stressful. And I don't do this because I actually like this shit. I do this because like and this is what my wife said. She was like, she decided to jump in this with me and help me because she was like, you ain't gonna stop. And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, there's literally no way you're gonna stop doing what you're doing. So I'm gonna have to help you do it right. And so if we create a sufficient enough base where we are not all out here drowning in debt and drowning in poverty and scratching for patrons here and patrons there, then we can actually build something that is literally going to be the face of the media in the future, right? Because nobody's going to CNN in about 20 years. They're coming to the internet, and we are pioneers in this space if we survive.
If we survive.
And I think, I don't know if that the demise, not necessarily maybe, like building a solid left media apparatus, but the demise of the corporate media sphere, it might be happening a little bit sooner because that Biden presidency
we ain't getting them clicks no more.
The worst
it's boring
thing that happened to mainstream media.
Yep.
And that's the thing, and like that's something that's like we all, I guess probably we're all thinking about is like, hey, after this election, what happens, right? But like that's, if you got a left audience, know that there's no honeymoon with Joe Biden. You're going
to see some bullshit rain down. Just wait until Monday comes when there's more analysis on this Atlanta shooting. You're going to see shit rain down.
But that seems like no one's going to pay attention. There's just less people paying attention.
They can only milk that so far, man.
I think there's going to be a lot of milking.
But Donald Trump was the best thing that ever happened to the media.
I agree. Hey, brother, I agree with you.
If he was still in office, I could probably be a millionaire, but before the end of his first year, he's gone now, and so and that's fine. You know what we said? I of a good conscience, we said much rather struggle financially than to have that motherfucker in there for a second term. But Marcus, you're absolutely right, man. It's not just independent media that's being hit with these clicks and like viewership is, I think they said 40 to 50% down for mainstream media. Like they are suffering.
Yeah. Well, and that's the people who said they were going to go. I was saying people who said they were going to go back to brunch went back to brunch.
Yeah, they really did. Except for COVID, but they wait.
Well, I mean, Biden came in and they said, I do not need to pay attention. Yeah. And I actually think that it leaves an opening, right? Because not necessarily you don't have to be a powerful player if your opponent isn't paying attention, And so this is where when we get the next few years, and like as you're talking about building left media, building left organizing things, trying to hold up people like Kashwama, trying to hold up people like organizations like the DSA in Nevada taking over, and always pushing those things because 2022, or no, what year is it right now? It's 2022. That's what I'm trying to. 2022 midterms.
Yeah,
it might it could be something powerful for the left as far as what they're capable of doing for primary season, but we can't be caught sleeping. There's a lot of people out to brunch right now. This allows an opportunity, right? If Goliath isn't paying attention, catch this motherfucker sleeping.
Well, I mean, I think one of the major concerns is for me, right, is that the political energy, and Jason hates when I say this, I think is with the right. and not with the left.
I don't disagree with you, and it's terrifying. It is a terrifying time right now.
The kinetic energy for sure.
Yeah,
but and I don't think it's genuine. I think it is well financed and well developed over the last 30 years, 40 years. But they kick that shit into hyperdrive. Man, Ben Shapiro spends $100,000 a month advertising on Facebook, just Facebook. Damn. That's why I'm like, we are so outgunned. But we have an opportunity. We got no choice but to keep fighting.
You know what's worse though? When cats want to do like, oh, here's a reaction video to something this dude said. Because there's so many times. Yeah. Like my kid is 22. She doesn't know what the fuck Ben Shapiro.
I've done a lot of fucking videos.
But I mean, it's hard not to. When I'm bored on and like when I'm streaming and like just want to fill some fucking time, I'll kick on Fox News just so I could talk shit to these motherfuckers live. And is that really doing anything? No, it's not doing anything. Does it make me feel a little bit better? Yeah, it does.
But I think the way I think we got an opportunity, man, in terms of like the humanity. Like COVID-19 actually did change something, right? I think people really understand this government don't give a fuck about you. You compare to other governments that people getting $2,000 a month, and we barely got $2,000 like twice or 2.5 times or whatever. Yeah. I think our appeal from the left should delve more into, at least not everybody doesn't have to do it, but I'm definitely trying to do it. And that's why I reduced on my Twitter bio. I reduced my politics down to 5 things because it's like, if you're going to argue with me against these things, then use a fool because you're going to look stupid. And it's tapping into the humanity and the lack of humanity that this system has towards human beings. Like we let 530,000 people die, and it didn't have to be that, right? And I think if we start leveraging the message of humanity in a fashion that you can't sever from policy, like poverty is a policy choice. Homelessness is a policy choice. The fact that there are people who are hungry in this country is a policy decision. I think if we come from that angle, we can get enough steam to actually push back over the next couple of years. And we got to do it together.
Well, guys, we've been going for 3.5 hours. Jeez. Ben, thank you so much for giving me some time to
appreciate you coming on, man.
Appreciate you coming on the show.
Come check us out again.
Anytime. Listen, man, anytime my voice is strong enough to do it, I will be here. And I'm going to shoot you guys an email. I'll get it all out either at one time or each of you once a day to come on the show and just talk that revolutionary shit. Because we might have some trap music playing and we laugh and joke, but underneath everything that we saying, it is about the people. So we'd love to have you out there.
Hey, I appreciate you for coming on, man. Thank you very much. Tell your wife we said thank you for letting us borrow you. I'm sure it was a family day. So
no. Honestly, it's an AKA day. I said, y'all try to get me. I'm trying to stay married. Y'all up here exposing this.
We thank you to the children too, because I know they're
absolutely. They cutting up, man. Anytime, fellas. Hey, y'all be easy, man, and I'll catch y'all on the next one round.
All right, peace, man.
Word, thanks, man.
There he goes. Ooh. All right, man. So we did 3.5 hours. I was not going to go 4 or 5. I know, Pascal, are you still doing an appearance on Ben Burgess' show?
I'm on Ben Burgess an hour and a half at 5 o'clock. Man. Yeah.
I am.
Yeah. He's taking that. Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, Pascal's a popular guy. Marcus probably has another 8-hour stream to do on Twitch because, that's how he gets cat food.
That's how Winston stays in these plush cat towers. We got streamed tonight at 8. It's our Saturday night edition.
This was a long show, but it went real fast.
Yeah.
Look, bro. I just want y'all to know I'm gonna be honest with everybody and the 2 niggas that I'm talking to. I was so worried about this show for a plethora of reasons, and I haven't slept.
Get the fuck out of here. How long? Days? We talking one night? We talking days?
She won't come on camera, but I haven't slept. And this morning, my girl goes, "Did you sleep at all?" I was like, "A little, like enough not to die."
So it was you didn't get enough sleep. you didn't have enough fine motor function to button up your shirt. Is that what it was? You couldn't work your hands to button up your shirt because you didn't get enough sleep. That is why Jason is showing off his 18 chest hairs. I was taking the time to count each individual
the
one.
Taco meat chest hairs, man. The taco meat chest hairs.
It's got a chest like the top of Homer Simpson's head.
I told you my mom said I need to put a relaxer in my chest hairs.
Oh, it's laid back. What was the pomade you were talking about?
Murray. I'm glad everything worked out today. Thank you very much, Dr. Sora Han. It's so weird to say Dr. Sora Han. Thank you very much, Sora, for coming on the show. I appreciate it. I've been trying to get Sora on the show back when I was still doing it in a studio and having people over before the lockdown. Thank you, Ben Dixon, for coming on. I hit him up a while back.
Paul Prescott.
Paul, thank you for taking time to come on the show. Like what we're building here is kind of blowing me away. That's another reason why I couldn't go to sleep. I was kind of getting a little nervous because I don't want to let people down. It's one thing when no one's watching. You can say whatever the fuck you want to say.
Yeah.
Right. Say wrong shit. But when people start watching you, and I'm very glad I have a team of amazing people around. Thank you, Sarah Bajlan, for hooking up the Ben Dixon interview, because you had to send those emails for us while I was out. So thank you, John Ross, for moderating the chat. We have to have a chat moderator now.
Yeah, we're developing a staff, man. It's getting exciting.
It's getting very exciting. Pascal's writing a book.
Yes.
So thank you guys. Thank you guys for the super chats. We'll be back Tuesday. We haven't officially said who the guest is Tuesday because I think I'm still working that out. So thank you guys very much for everything. And I will leave you with a song that is very near and dear to my heart.
Oh man, yes. You can't.
Uncle Ruckus,
All right.
no relation.
That boy good. That boy good.
Thank you guys very much. We'll see you all Tuesday, Marcus, and you're going to be on what time tonight?
8 twitch.tv/leftflankvets. That's where you can find us.
Eastern time, right?
Yes, 8 p.m. Eastern time.
And that is Marcus, aka the only black man in Maine.
I have some body doubles now.
And you're on Ben Dixon tonight, Pascal?
Yeah, man, I'm on Ben Dixon. I'm trying to get some lunch, man. I haven't eaten breakfast yet, man. Y'all got me out here.
Okay, well, everybody.